Dallas Smith. Joanne, I was going to ask you, are you related to Joanne Smith? I saw her name. She was right after you. I don't know if Joe said anything about it. It's like, no, we're not related. So you're not related to Joanne. That was just out of my curiosity, Dallas. So Dallas, thank you. Joanne Smith, Julie Reimer, Adrian Gerhardt, James Bobish, with James O'Leary, and Rod Lang. If you can all come up here, sit comfortably, wait for $1 million question.
Joshua will be joining.
Oh, nice. And Adrian, thank you for inviting Joshua Arek, who is the chairperson for the Nunavik Planning Commission. Joshua has known me since I was basically a baby. So Joshua is originally from living in Pond Inlet. So it's always fun to see Joshua. Thank you. Who are we missing? Rod? Rod's there, very good. James, Adrian, along with Joshua Ariak. Joanne. Joe, if you see Joe out there, he's like, hey, Joe, you're on it. But before we start, I would just like to take an opportunity to acknowledge, appreciate the time that Dallas Smith, we had lunch with you. It was amazing. There was country food there too. We had caribou. We had frozen fish. These are all frozen and raw. We were like, oh, they're the best. Beluga, it was beautiful. Nakomi, Evie Mark, she brought along those country food. It was, I mean, as Inuit, we consider food as being part of, like, it's something that makes you feel more at home. So even if you're at home up north, but especially when you're down here in Montreal, to see country food like that and you're able to cut it into small pieces on a cardboard, I think that's the most welcoming feeling you can have anywhere as an Inuk. So, nakomi. Big round of applause for Dallas Smith to take the time to sit down and answer questions of Inuit local representatives from all 15 Inuit Nunavik communities, which includes Sasabi. We had representatives from Nunavut as well too, which was amazing. So, nakomi Dallas.
Thank you, Dallas. Feel free to ask questions.
What we're going to do next year is, we had tons of questions, but time is always challenging. It's always interesting. So I only have one question. I don't expect all of you to answer it, but I think this is, we're having a clear understanding now where the Planning Commission started with NELCA in the early years, why the raison d'être for the Planning Commission. And today we've talked about what people are doing, and which is amazing. That your presentations, your discussions from Nunavut, from Nunatsiavut, from BC, I mean, and from the EU, it's amazing. We're learning a lot from what's happening right now. So, and tomorrow is like, day 3 is going to be like, what are we going to do into the future? We're going to start pick your brains and get your ideas out what we should do next as a planning commission. So this question relates to that preparation, because there's a lot of work that has been done. There's a lot of work that still needs to be done, but there's one specific area we're hoping we're going to be able to pick your brains. What should we do? My question, have a wireless microphone somewhere. Yeah, Dallas has it, so that means you're going to start. No, just kidding. So my question to all of you, if you want to answer it, it's going to be so useful. If you can't, I understand. If you have another opinion or a comment, or if you want to add on to what's been said. My question to each of the panelists is, how can we keep communities at the core of planning? I know it's very simple, but it's very loaded. How can we keep Inuit communities at the core of planning? Hano takoa nunali ilote.
How can we involve the communities as we're planning, in the planning process? What should we do is the question. James Balbis.
I think we should start with asking the question in a different way. We say here, how can we keep communities? I would say, how can we get communities to be at the core of the planning as a starter? Because once a plan takes shape without consultation and engagement with people at the local level, the structure of the plan starts taking place, and then when the community catches up, they sort of had to add themselves to the plan. So the plan does not come from the core of the community. So I think that's what I think the question should be.
Well, there you go. That's why I appreciate it. So the ball's on the rest of you is to see how can we get communities to be at the core of planning. So James threw it out. You can also still, like, how can we keep communities and get communities?
I just want to go back to yesterday's, some of yesterday's presentation. I was talking to Mélène Lerivière after she presented, and she was talking about marriage and divorce, you know, with a certain arrangement that's been made between the people and government. I think that at the beginning, we're doing the detail work of gathering information, making engagement with the people. So in the engagement, there are so many activities to put the policies and the plans, objectives together. That's a very detailed work that has to come from the community. So if that is done well, that's the engagement. And people that got engaged before they got married, you know, you get engaged to know the other person better, and then you finally make, okay, we'll set a date, and then it works. But if the engagement is not done properly, then the marriage is not going to work properly. So that's the importance of gathering information from the community right at the early level so that people are at the core of the planning.
So I have to add on to this. How do you engage the communities? I mean, you want that engagement to the connections to be made. How do you engage the communities? That James, thank you for your comments, but I would really appreciate if the other panelists, like, how do we engage them? How do we get them curious? Do we do door prizes like I've been doing? Like, I know that's been very popular. So,
Yes.
Julie, how do we get communities
More
engaged?
prizes.
Yes.
It sounds frivolous, but those things are really important, and it's heartening to hear that you had such a fulfilling lunch hour as a collective of different cultures and different peoples and your communities coming together. That's really important, and finding time, making that investment in the relationship building piece. It can set you on the right path, and doing it in a way that makes sense for your world, your way of life, I think can help you to get communities as part of the process and the plan from the start. To me, you're doing a lot of things really, really well already. This has been a bit of a transformative experience for me in a day and a half, so well done.
Yes, I really appreciate that. Unity is a word that keeps coming back regularly enough. We got to do this together. Dallas, please add on to that. Dallas Smith. Thank you, Julie.
Yeah, thank you. I think, one of the lessons we learned was to communicate with the different levels of our community. we had discussions with some of our school children, which made them ask their parents about it when they got home. And when the parents couldn't answer, they had to ask their grannies or their aunties about it. And so it just created a bit of momentum that we started talking about land use planning in different rooms, but not to have a goal to discuss land use planning. And it started as a young man, as I sat down with our elders, it was always well, I'm dumb, I don't have anything to share, I don't know anything. And then you stop the discussion, turn the camera off, and they'll talk to you for an hour and a half about one watershed or one mountain range that they stood on to be able to see wildlife or different values. So you really have to learn how to be interactive with different levels of the community, but deliver the same message. This day and age is social media. While I'm not a Facebooker, I don't do Facebook, I wish I did to communicate a little bit more effectively with the generation that uses Facebook. But when you think about social media and things like that, you think predominantly young people. But I've got more aunts on Facebook than I do cousins. And so just learning how to communicate with the different demographics, but still having a similar message is so important. It's about what's best for the community. And when we started traditional land use planning, we were so cut and dry and we were so boring about it. We were just so educational and we just had so much regiment to it. And it's really about bringing a discussion and having someone, whether it be independent, to be able to listen to that discussion, to transcribe it, to make sure that discussion evolves. Because as Indigenous people, you get us talking, we could complain about the same thing for a real long time. But if you can nuance the question, each different discussion, you're still talking about the same thing, but you're bringing it to that next level. What did that mean to our family? What did that mean to our community? What did that mean to our nation? And you start to spread it out and you start to be able to find different footholds for other people to join the discussion. There's always a couple people who are really ready to share, and then there's some of the quiet ones who I tend to find have the most knowledge. But you need that discussion to be starting, and you need to have someone not manage the discussion, but facilitate it, to nurture it, to make sure that the discussion grows. And that sounds a little bit more spiritual than an answer I would have given somebody 15 years ago when I was the guy holding the pen trying to get a specific answer. And I'm kind of like, okay, get to the point, get to the point. But as was discussed in the facilitators meeting yesterday, Indigenous people have a way of storytelling that gets to the point. And once they've made their point, you realize that the first 12 minutes of that conversation were really about that point. It might not have seemed that way. So we really have to get better at listening as we're facilitating to get to these outcomes. And I don't want to make it sound like a strategic roadmap where we're trying to coax something that somebody doesn't want to give. It's really making sure that people are comfortable in sharing that information in dialogue. And that's what makes it community driven. Because again, like I said, in the older times, whenever we told government something, we usually ended up with some kind of restriction or prohibition or something that resulted of it. Now we've had enough time where the generations have been able to heal from some of that we can actually get on to some really information and knowledge sharing.
Well, I'm glad you kind of touched upon that. I really find that we're still dealing with a lot of trauma, with colonizations, with a lot of outsiders coming into our Inuit communities, specifically in Nunavik area, to our communities, like, hey, this is how you're going to live. So that disengagement makes it even more of a, for so long, Inuit have been controlled or decisions have been made and forced upon. So I think that's one of the challenges that we really had. So I'm kind of hoping from Nunavut Planning Commission or even from Nunatsiavut that, I'm sorry, but you're going to be able to catch on, but I really want to know that disengagement, that, like, for example, I'm going to use elections as an example. Our elections are now, we're like 20-30% voter turnout. But on such an important question of keeping communities part of the planning, to keep their interest, when you're doing...
How can we involve
you're planning them, either Nunavut or Nunavut, if you can touch upon that? Is it like, what were your challenges and how do you deal with it?
Yeah, I guess a couple of things. I think the first thing is in terms of engagement, you have to meet the communities you're engaging with where they're at and where they want to be. Like, it's not a one-size-fits-all. So in Nunavut, what Nain wants is going to be very different than what Rigolet wants or what Nunavik wants for our same components. And so creating space to have the appropriate conversations in there is really important. And also setting up engagement times that make sense. Doing it during the fall goose hunt, that's not the time to be doing engagements. And I think a lot of times when you have partnerships, you really need to think about when you're setting up those engagements and what those look like, and to make sure people are comfortable and are able to have the conversations in the space that they want. And then the second component is actually on that partnership component, is we have a lot of partners, but everyone that's in a partnership is there for a reason, and it's not necessarily just to support you. And you really need to think about that, is whether that's academia or NGOs or other things, there's a lot of great support that comes. But they all have a mandate. They all are very interested in they're academics, they're a very specific thing. Versus NGOs, specific NGOs have a mandate to get funding and other things as well. So you really need to consider what that other piece is and how that relates to the community. And then the federal government, I mean, we just had a change in federal government. It used to be environment and climate change, now it's sovereignty and security. And so you have to be strategic in your relationships in these situations, in the engagement and the planning. And you need to work within those frameworks. But for like the Amundsen Marine Plan, that doesn't change our priorities for Labrador Inuit in that plan. It changes in how you're engaging in that space. So I think that's really important because governments are always going to change. But what is being done in the marine planning component, we want to make sure it's based off the priorities of the community in the region.
I really appreciate your response. Adrian, Joshua, I mean, up in Nunavut, so how did you do it?
Thank you. I think, first of all, keeping communities at the center of planning, I would say, is constitutionally protected. So the land claims agreements, Nunavut, Article 11 of the Nunavut Agreement, and I believe also the same for the other agreements, explicitly states that the planning must account for Inuit goals and objectives, that the Planning Commission must consider Inuit well-being. So that already is mandating us, the Commission, to consider communities. And throughout our engagement, we have, there's numbers of engagements, like sessions that we've done in the plan. And I think the planning system is designed to capture Inuit Kaujimaja to Kangit and to provide communities with that voice early in the process. So early in the process, as one of my slides said, during the drafting of the plan, that's where you get most communities' input. That's where there's active participation from communities. And the Commission obviously plays a key role in going to these communities and making sure that those workshops are well represented, not only like the elders, but also youth, women, everyone. And what I find interestingly is that at some point in this planning process, it starts shifting and then it becomes more of a political decision. And that is where communities have less opportunity to provide input. So as I said, it's early in the process when you have this time for community input, but then later when, for example, in Nunavut, we are at the signatory stage, and it's been 3 years, we all know that. And in that stage, you risk that if, for example, the political landscape change, you could come back with a decision that could be detrimental to what communities early said. So all this to say that keeping communities at the center of planning, it's throughout, even at the end, at the level of higher decision making. Mm-hmm. Just wanted to make that point.
And giving them a voice.
Yes.
I think that's one of the things you said. You got to give them an opportunity to have a voice and to be able to talk about what their concerns are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like the draft land use plan or marine plan must reflect and reflects, in the case of reflects community voices. And that's what I find interestingly is that you get to a point that this is the best version of you have, and then it comes to a decision-making process that could take years, as in the case in Nunavut, and then how's that? What will that lead to? What will be the outcome of that decision-making, and how would that affect what Inuit said early in the process?
Yeah.
Right?
Yaswa inutito kiunga ako magawehano ngil to tsem.
If you want to respond in Inuktitut, it's okay.
25 taratan na imakpio tareo si atoktaw nirila tanga pimmakektuang umay tanoha takatigo. Ino hatiti nunalini tui hano ilaw liu mitigialok kasyo. Okumay tulok ha. Ilaw tiga suge ang tusakpigi ang isumalo tigiyagin. Makay.
Okay. I think public consultation is very important. Well, we had our public hearing in Nunavut, and oftentimes we heard duty to consult, and that's what we did. We went through to each region and consulted with the leaders, and but in order to engage with communities, you need funding. That's where problem comes, and I think we need to kind of work together to get our government to understand that we need funding. It's expensive to travel, and we need funding, and also social media is great, but having to meet like this is very important to Inuit. Mainuk dito kay Inuit Nunavik atogami.
For the Inuit are using the land. They know, they are familiar with the land and the marine areas, regions. To my understanding, in my position so far, the Caribou have calving grounds, and the Inuit would like to support this. What they want supported, protected, and the researchers have studied in their studies the calving areas. There's resources. I don't know how the Caribou know, but for the resources available in the areas, that's where the Caribou go for calving grounds. For the minerals, for example, for the mining companies, they're after them, but Inuit want them support them.
And that's for our communities, we have to engage with the communities and get their opinion and their, although we're mandated to consult with communities, and we should really do that. It's very important to the communities.
Yes.
And when communities can get involved, they feel they're included in that plan.
Nakumik, I really appreciate that. Traditional knowledge, that's what I think Joshua's biggest message was, traditional knowledge. I think you heard it on the translation, but the calving grounds, Inuit wanted to make sure that the Caribou calving grounds are protected, that there's no activity happening there. Even if there's resources that are available, calving grounds have to be, because somehow, some way, Inuit have learned that somehow, some way, caribou have those specific calving grounds because of the richness of the minerals or the earth that's there. There's a specific reason why calving grounds are there for the caribou. They know that. So that knowledge comes from Inuit, traditional knowledge. That really comes from there. And I think that's the message the Planning Commission really needs to remember is what does traditional knowledge, what kind of traditional knowledge Inuit hold? So, and I think that really comes from the elders which we have lost connection with for many of us. So, nakumay makaroyaso. I think James, you wanted to add on something?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on what Julie said in her presentation, and then with Dallas is like be creative in this process too, because there's a lot of models throughout the world that you can look at, but then every plan has to fit the context that it's in. And I think it's about creating a space for ownership at that community level to define what a plan is for them. Because at their early start, you have these environmentalists coming in and saying, oh, this is how this should work and this is what you need to do, and it doesn't fit with the knowledge or the local context. And so you need to, when you're engaging, it's just about allowing the communities to kind of own the process, right? And so you can look at the best practices. You can, of course, share your knowledge about other regions, learn what worked for them, but then give the space to then make the local context work in the plan. And for the engagement itself, like what Rod said, when the EMRPC, when the EU Marine Region Planning Commission held engagements and consultations in 2018, the timing was what works for the community. A lot of the coastal Cree communities were relocated because of Hydro-Quebec. So every year there's gatherings to go back to the old locations, and that's where those consultations were held.
Nice.
Because you're working with the speed of the community and what works for them. And I think too is like local capacity is super important. Having support at the local level, and that's some of the hardest thing to get. Because people in the community, a lot of the really knowledgeable people wear multiple hats. And unfortunately, they're just not able to provide the time that this process requires. And James used to share that back in the day, to get people to come to engagements, you'd show half a movie, have the engagement session, and you want to see the rest of the movie? Well, you have to sit and wait, Times have changed, but, I think it's hopefully that you can provide, let people own it, and then they'll be wanting to come and sit and share the knowledge, and we hear that from youth, it's kind of really hard these days to get youth to participate. They're glued to their phones, or they want to play video games at home. And, it's, we heard from some youth during the National Marine Conservation Area consultations that trying to get youth in the same room with the elders, and a lot of youth are intimidated because they find it hard to share when the elders are in the room, but it's trying to get that cross, conversation going. And so, anyway.
I really appreciate your comments, and I know the staff from the Planning Commission are taking notes and looking after this. I just had a question for Joanne. Joanne, listening is another thing, and I think we had a very good discussion last night while we were preparing for these. Listen, I got to say non-Inuit right now, but I would love to say white people, but non-Inuit have a tendency to speak a lot and have a really hard time to just give that space and silence to give a very humble Inuk elder a moment to speak. And it may take 3, 4, 5, 12 minutes before they finally get to the point. How do we do that? And I'm asking Joanne that because you've spent many years in these types of responsibilities, work, job, community. Yeah. So how?
I think that's a great. Thank you for the challenge. Thank you for the challenging question, and thank you for your remarks as well. And so, I think some of it is experience. So obviously, I've had the great privilege to work with Dallas Smith and the Namakolis and the Central Coast, and the planning team, right? Where, as you say, everyone's keen. They've come out of school or something like that. One thing I noticed yesterday, by the way, was I was listening to the talks and the questions and the keynote that was recorded, and there's a lot to learn, not just in what was said, but how it was said. So one of the things that I really picked up on, though, was the same message was said probably 4 or 5 times. And so, and as a white person or as a person trained in academia, you're meant to go very quickly, right? So anyone that's sort of defended themselves. But what I thought was really interesting was, one of the main messages out of the keynote talking about the history was he probably said the word "we didn't surrender" like 10 times, just to make sure that was really clearly heard. So I think as a white person, we also just have to get out of our own way. We're here in service. I don't live in the north, for example. I'm here as a guest in this situation. For Seychelles, we were brought in, we were asked to please lead. But there's Seychelles, it's a small country of 90,000 people. They have a British background in French, so the British, I knew we broke for tea. That's really familiar to me. But I think a lot of it is asking people literally to wait.
To wait.
Wait. Patience. Wait. Yeah, let people speak. And we don't, I think some of it is training, so, and then maybe also expectations that are asked of people, and they think that they're there to solve problems, but you might not be. And so I think it's one of the things we talked about yesterday too, was clarity of roles. So I don't know if I answered that very well, but
No,
I learned a lot from working with
I
the
think I
First
could have
Nations.
put it more. I mean, I really want to touch upon the topic of listening, taking the time to listen. I mean, of course, you could have just said, is like, you just shut up and sit and listen. That's it. You could have really said that. But what I want to bring up, and you answered it really well, is that we have to take the time to listen and wait and be patient. And you said, coming from academia, someone who's been in the education system and have a lot of information, done a lot of research, have a lot of information to share. But when you sit down with a community member, it's like, okay, I think all that, I'm going to, whatever I've learned, I'm going to put it aside. I'm going to leave it at home. And then I'm going to learn from this elder. Mm-hmm. I think that's the message you brought on, and I really appreciate to be very respectful. Say, just shut up and listen. That's what I think that you could have said that very easily.
No,
thank you. James?
Yeah, go ahead. You go ahead first.
One of the things I was thinking about when we talk about planning, how do Native people think about planning? And I asked my sister, she works in the Cree language. She's a Cree language expert, I would say. And I asked her, how did the Native people plan in the past? And she gave me a Cree word. She said, it's Yesquayaitum. And you break it down into two words, Yesquiw, just to get ready.
Get ready.
Yeah.
Yeskiwa, get ready.
And no, Yesqui, that's the first part of the word. Okay. Get ready. Ayaitum, how you think about it. How do you think about getting ready? And I think this is how elders respond to questions. They make a big picture. They cover everything. They don't give you the specific answer right at the beginning, but they give you the environment around that answer. And then finally, you get to, but you have to listen very carefully. So there's an art to listen to elders, because they could say something very simple. 3 days later, it might hit you, So it's that kind of interaction.
I wish we had more time. This is basically it, but I wonder if you have like 1 or 2 words. I mean, only because there's lots of you here, and unfortunately we're out of time. 1 or 2 words. How to engage Inuit, or whatever thought that comes to your mind. I'm going to start with Dallas over there. Throw that away and pass down the little rock around a circle, and we're going through our emotions. And 1 or 2 words, or a few comments in as fewest words as possible. I know that's challenging, but in terms of planning and how to get Inuit involved, how to engage people. I mean, the example I'll use, Joshua said money. We'll need a lot of money. I think Joshua can easily repeat that right now. We will need a lot of money. So what do you think, Dallas?
I really think, and again, this is more spiritual, I think our heart has to be into it. We have to realize how big of a tool this is going to be for so many more generations. While we've all said it's a living document, it's always going to be updated, it has to start somewhere. And the ability to make it start on the right foot comes from that community engagement. With that said, you don't want to scare them and be, this is a make or break moment, because it's not. But it is a turning point. It is a game changer, being able to have a community-directed plan that's going to help set the page for every piece of governance coming forward after that. So making sure that the community puts their heart into it, and the biggest way to achieve that is by inclusivity. You start with the people who are willing to talk, and then the other people start whispering, hey, I didn't know about this, they should talk about this, and then it grows. Just like our hearts, it gets bigger and bigger.
Well, I've gotten to know you a little bit in the past 24. I shouldn't have gotten you to start, because you could keep going. My challenge to you guys was like just in the fewest words possible. But what I took from you, the word turning point, I think is very important. This is really a crux in time for Nunavik Inuit in terms of NMR. This is a turning point, and I can really feel it in this room. So I'm going to ask James if you can say much less words.
Yeah, just maybe use stories and use it as a form of knowledge.
Wow.
Like, just passing down knowledge, recording stories, and letting the youth tell stories for the future, I guess.
I love that. Stories. Right.
I kind of want to touch on your point earlier about I'm a recovering academic. That's how I like to describe myself. Is that I basically had to unlearn everything I learned in university. Because the second you go to the north and you're out on the land, you very quickly learn you know nothing about anything. And when you're out with Inuit and knowledge holders. So that's just, I think it's very important in that space that despite what I was told through all my schooling, I'm an expert in absolutely nothing. And I think that's really important when you're in these spaces and planning for these things.
They're experts. Adrian.
Yes, I'd say a message that it's very important to always communicate is that this isn't the Commission's plan. It is your plan, it is the community's plan, and that is very powerful. Just to say that, a few words.
Janelle, Charity, Rebecca, Susan, you heard that? It's not the Commission's plan, it's the community.
And like,
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
I'd say that because their voice, like the community's voice and input, can have long-lasting impacts. So the plan can, when their voices are reflected in the plan, that can provide long-term benefits for future generations. So I think about the plan also in terms of the future generations.
You're getting to the same word count as James, as Dallas, so I'm going to pass it on to Joshua. Joshua?
Okay, thank you. I was going to say that too, because I was involved in another organization that the plan, when you consult with Inuit and the community, it's not your plan anymore. It's the plan of the community, of the Inuit that you represent. That's what I was going to say. Thank you.
Beauty, simple beauty. James, do you have a few words that you want to leave? Last comment.
Last comment. I think we do have to think about, there are words that we use in our work every day, planning, conservation, all these technical, which fall into the technical procedural governance perspective, I would say. And, but again, if you examine any word, no matter what word it is, could be the hardest word in the dictionary, you sit with an elder and you explain that word to them. And when they catch the concept, that's when you'll get the knowledge to come out.
I'm going to agree with you that one. I worked as an interpreter once, and I worked with an elder. And our job was to find an Inuit, to create an Inuit word. That's exactly how it worked. Julie? Last few comments? Last comments.
I think my reflection listening to these brilliant other people is we're talking about ownership, and I just want to acknowledge to you all that ownership doesn't happen overnight. That feeling of this is your plan, it might not be right now, but as we've heard in the last couple of days, be patient with yourselves and with the Planning Commission and with each other. That ownership will come. Keep leaning in.
Nakomi Julie. Joe?
Thank you. I think, especially on this topic, I would emphasize removing barriers. What are any barriers that are keeping the community from being at the core? And it could be financial, right? We've set up honorariums before. I wanted to mention that. But just,
Closer to the mic, sorry.
oh, sorry. Honorariums, we have set that up before so that people are able to attend. But I think really just kind of circling back over to Dallas and having been part of so much community engagement is setting up safety and care. So
Excuse me, can you repeat that?
safety
Okay.
and care.
Safety and care.
People are talking about things they really care about. So just making sure it's safe to talk about it.
I think we can literally spend the rest of the afternoon, even most of the day tomorrow, just exchanging, communicating, listening. So that, because I know in this room, our brains are like, wow, yes, this is the direction we want to have. And I really appreciate you taking the time to be here and evolved along with my questions, because I only started with one question and it just evolved. And you were such amazing players, and your comments, what you shared, your experience is insurmountable. Thank you for taking the time, Dallas, James, Rod, Adrian, Joshua, James, Julie, and Joanne. Nakomi makaluk, thank you. Yes, there is.
Thank you,
Nakomi,
Julie.
thank you. L'Oréal. Tukisinalim nulla.
It makes me relax. So we had a lot of we heard a lot of words yesterday. These are all the projects that's taking place. These are the people who are the drivers of all these projects. We've been hearing a lot of terminology in the last yesterday. It was even exhausting listening to the discussions yesterday, but today and this morning, from listening to them, I feel more relaxed because I can see it's obvious. They have a lot of experience and they want to help support Inuit communities. So I'm very grateful that for the panelists who had great insights. So let's look at our agenda. Looking at our agenda, who are working on this in our marine planning? Who is working on these files? Who are already working on these? What are the projects that are being worked on? Now we'll be hearing from. We'll hear about resources for marine planning. There's quite a few speakers who will be speaking. There's NMRPC use and occupancy study. This is GeoPraxis. They'll be speaking. They'll be doing a presentation. I mean, first to come up will be Stephen Kilburn. Let's welcome Stephen Kilburn from the NMRPC Use and Occupancy Study.
Except it appears that the computer that this is on is missing a font. So some of that random scrambled stuff is syllabics that are in a different font that I could see it, but.
And I have to remind you that you have about 10 minutes.
I
I know we took a lot of your time, but
Not at all. Okay. Okay. I have to do something about that at some point. I'm following all of that collected wisdom and knowledge and just diving into something about some data. Yes. Am I on the mic? Oh, there I am. I apologize. So I'm following all of that collected wisdom and discussion, and I feel just so very small talking about this little topic. And I have only 10 minutes before the referee back there gives me a red card, so I'm going to try and keep this presentation as an overview. If anybody wants more information or has unanswered questions, please talk to me on a break or drop me a line. And this thing here, it's like magic. This slide focuses on the knowledge and information part Joanna mentioned in her presentation this morning. So marine planning for the NMR involves connecting information about the nature of the NMR, physical characteristics, its animals and plants, seasonal cycles, etc., with how it's used by Nunavik people and others, and how you desire to use it, in order to manage the different uses so they don't cause damage or conflict with each other, all while respecting your long-term vision for a desirable future. And as you know, Nilka says that the plan needs to protect and promote interests of Nunavik Inuit, plus take into account other users of the NMR, and to take into account Nunavik Inuit, NMRPC needs information on how the Nunavik communities use the marine region. That's why NMRPC decided to initiate its use and occupancy plan. So, research for understanding how communities know their home territory is broadly called cultural research. And it's sometimes referred to as traditional knowledge research, though some communities don't like the word because it sounds like it means old times, not now. Cultural research can be divided into two broad categories. One is asking about long-term community understandings of plants and animals, where they are, how they move and behave, seasonal and much longer cycles of weather, ice, water, etc. That's traditional knowledge or traditional ecological knowledge. The second is now called use and occupancy research. That involves documenting and understanding plant and animal harvesting, places where people stay overnight, places of special importance, and sometimes place names and travel routes. Now, thinking of those as separate is artificial, of course. A hunter knows where and when they have the best chance of harvesting seals because they know how seals behave and where the ice is going to be thin enough for seals to make holes. That's traditional ecological knowledge at work. The hunter knows how to travel there most safely across ice leads. That's traditional knowledge in action. The hunter can talk to others about where they went using place names. The harvesting of the seals is use and occupancy. There are a number of kinds of cultural research, and I hope that that's coming in right, that can help plans. These are some of them. Travel route mapping, studies of what's harvested and how it feeds enclosed people, so it's how it works in the economy. Documenting heritage and archaeology sites like Avatik does, mapping Inuit names of places, documenting what Inuit know about weather, sea ice, animal migration, plant growth, mapping of mammal, bird, fish, and sea creature harvest, and mapping where people stay overnight on the land, birth and burial sites, and special places. It's the last two that NMRPC focused on in its use and occupancy study. Yes, that worked. or did that work? In 2012, the NMRPC initiated the study. Over 4 years through mid-2016, 806 participants were interviewed from all Nunavik communities and Chisasibi. The study area covered the land area of Nunavik as well as the marine region. Land and marine activities relate to each other. It's really difficult to ask a harvester about one and not the other, so the interviews were about both. The study population, the people who were candidates to be interviewed, was current or former Inuit residents of Nunavik who were or had been active harvesters and were at least 25 years old. Study participants were asked to participate in map interviews, where the interviewer marked information from 69 categories. Harvest categories included big game, fish, marine mammals, small game, waterfowl, plants, and marine gathering. As well, overnight sites such as cabins, tents, or igloos, birth and death sites and burial sites, and other sites of cultural importance were mapped. In total, around 206,000 sites were mapped, of which around 72,000 are in the NMR itself. And this little slide here is an example of just one of those maps. The CH are Arctic char harvest sites, the CO are cod, and that thing, if this works, no it doesn't. That little round circle there confused me when I first saw it, and I thought it meant the whole island, but it turned out to be the route for an annual dog sled race. So, how can the NMR connect this rich data set showing Nunavik Inuit activities in the marine region to a marine use plan? Information compiled from the research is numeric or quantitative in the sense that the output is a digital database of points, lines, and areas. Those can be mapped and analyzed technically using geographic information system software. And yes, Julie said this morning to beware of the data trap, but data can be your friend. As you'll see though, the counting and analyzing and mappings are ways to circle back to Inuit and start conversations about what they know and think is important. So, we can do analyses of harvest locations based on relative density of those sites. That is, the more sites that are recorded in an area, the more it might be defined as an important hotspot. There are different ways of looking at this. We can assess the density based on number of Inuit who recorded activities. If a lot of community members, harvesters, stay in an area, that might point to it being important. We could also look at activities based on age groups for study participants, maybe pointing to changing activity for younger members of the communities. That could be important to consider. Or we can look at how harvest patterns overlap between different communities. I need to put in a plug for my friend Brian Lewis from Strata 360. He has great examples across the hall, and he has colored pencils, and he's dying for people to mark them up, so talk to him on the break. We can also look at particular categories. So how does the density of reported seal harvest line up with seal habitat variables from the WWF or Nature Conservancy or such? Do they seem to support each other, or do they raise questions to discuss? Now, did you notice all those mights or coulds or mays that I used when talking about the important areas? Here's where the data and mapping shifts back to conversations with Inuit. Maps or mapping analysis result, when you put them on a screen, are a useful way of focusing and generating discussion. Maybe an area on a map appears to be used by less people than other areas, but in fact is very important because the people who do harvest there contribute a lot to their community. Inuit will spot that weakness in the maps and computer analysis. Maybe when community members have a map in front of them that shows a hot spot, they'll talk and discover that more people might use that space than they thought. Maybe patterns on the maps will lead to other insights or discussion. One of the great uses for UO research products is to focus community engagement and consultation. Maps help you remind people about being out on the ice and water and land and what they do and value there. Seeing your own information and that from your family and friends on a map sparks conversations. One area where UO information is used is in impact assessment. Every study participant has areas of knowledge and expertise, of course. It's a very good assumption that if a project or industrial activity is being contemplated in an area, the people have walked or boated or skidooed there and stayed overnight and hunted and fished are likely to have good insights on how the project could impact it. They may also be able to name other people who are active in the area who maybe didn't participate in the UO study. It's easy to ask the computer to make a list of everyone in the study who recorded something in an area. That's a starting point for conversations with community experts. This slide here shows an example for that kind of query from the Haltsuk First Nation on the Pacific coast of BC. They used a technical query to find community members who were active in 58 sub-areas. Those people were then contacted for targeted consultation about the sub-areas in a plan. No red, it is, maybe I'm colorblind. I hope this has helped you understand how the UO data can help marine planning in the NMR. Nakamik, thank you for your time.
Stephen, I appreciate your time. Nakamik, Stephen.
Thank you, Stephen Kilburn. And from the NMRPC, use and occupancy study. Next, our next speaker will be enhanced maritime situational awareness from EMSA.
Please welcome Marie-Michelle Simard, Amalo Gabriel Partington. I hope I have this right? Okay, good. Oh, there you go. Oh, it's just going to be Gabriel. What happened to Marie-Michelle? So, no, you don't need to answer that. I guess Marie-Michelle will be grading you and how your presentation is.
You can come up if you want.
Tunga si Tauli, Gabriel Partington.
Thank you. Let's welcome Gabriel Partington.
All right, hi everyone. Am I standing close enough to this? Just wave at me if I'm not. My name's Gabriel Partington. I work for Transport Canada. I work for the Enhanced Maritime Situational Awareness Initiative. It's a mouthful and a half. We just call it EMSA for short. And after this presentation, I'm also going to be speaking on behalf of the Places of Refuge team, just a different team at Transport Canada. So. There you go. So EMSA is a very broad system. It's super customizable. You can do a lot. So it just skipped. Okay, no, I'm good. You can do so much on it. In 10 minutes, I'm just going to cover the very basics. And essentially, what EMSA is a mapping tool. It's been co-developed over the past 7 years, maybe even more, with 13 Indigenous partners spread out across the country, 3 of them being in the Arctic. And it's a system that's been under continuous development. So the main goal of the system, if you will, is to provide Indigenous and coastal communities with access to information on what is going on in the waters around your community. So if you've ever just looked out on the water and you've maybe seen a ship in the distance, you have no idea what ship it is, where it comes from, what it's doing there, well, you can open EMSA, pull up a layer that shows live vessel locations and get all sorts of information on local traffic, and then overlay that with other data sets. Anyone can access the system, so it is open to all, but you do need to request an account, and accounts are free. So anyone here can, there's a QR code at the end of the presentation. You can scan that, request an account, and then get access to all of this information. We also have a booth, by the way, I'll just mention, in the other rooms, so feel free to visit us. We're there during the breaks and during lunch. You can click around the website and see what's up with EMSA. There is a mobile app designed for offline use, which I'll get to in a bit, but yeah, we'll start with the web version. And you can also import your own data sets. Just to make a little connection with the marine planning process, so EMSA can be used for more than just this, but it can fit in really well with the marine planning process, especially this image here. The steps are a little bit different than what Susan talked about yesterday, but the broad steps are kind of similar. So if we look at this graphic here, we have point number 3 on collecting data and knowledge. So EMSA is a strong tool for ongoing and iterative data collection. So not just one-time baseline data, but ongoing. We have the mobile app. You can build custom forms and such to collect data on how people are using the land. If we move to step 4, which is analyzing ocean condition and uses, EMSA has admittedly has limited analytical capabilities, but you can bring in data sets from other models and superimpose those with all sorts of other data layers, data sets on the system to identify areas of convergence from multiple different factors. And then where EMSA really shines is point number 6 here, and that is monitoring, evaluating, and enforcing. So once the plan has been implemented, EMSA has a lot of functionality that allows you to sort of see how the plan is being implemented. You can monitor vessel traffic in real time. You can pull reports, evaluate, how are the measures being followed, that sort of thing. So very strong functionality, which I'll get to in just a little bit. EMSA has all sorts of data. I've mentioned the real-time vessel traffic. It's a little small here, but the upper image in the top right, you can see little dots everywhere. Those are ships in real time, and there's a slide that maybe has a clearer picture of that. You can just open EMSA at any time, click on a vessel, and pull information on it. We also have historical vessel tracks. So the one on the bottom is actually showing us maritime traffic for the entirety of 2023. So these are all the AIS points stitched together for the entire year, and we can see that there is a lot of traffic passing through Nunavik and waters around Nunavik. So we have these data sets all the way back to 2013 for those historical tracks, and we update every year with the latest traffic as well. So those can be really useful for looking at broader patterns where marine traffic is happening. On top of this, we do have tons of other data sets. Just a few of them are listed there, from environmental conditions, water current speeds and directions, wind currents, or wind speeds and directions. We've got marine and protected areas on the system, and you can also import your own data sets and overlay those, or just collect data on the system. So adding your data to the system brings me to data sharing. EMSA is designed in a way that essentially any data you add to the system remains your own. It's hosted on third-party servers separate from the government. Myself, as a government administrator user on the system, I have like a firewall between communities and government, so I can see what all our other government users are doing on the system, but there's a complete firewall blocking me from seeing what anyone outside of government is doing on there, unless you choose to share your data with me or with other users. So you can actually work with what we call spaces. You can keep your data private to yourself, share it within other community members, or open it up to specific groups or specific users. So even in collaboration with academia, if you're collaborating with various federal government agencies, provincial government agencies, all of these different groups, you retain full control on who has access to your data, the level of access they have, and all of that. So getting to that real-time vessel tracking, that's the image on the left-hand side, and once again, we're seeing a bunch of different dots of different colors. These are ship positions in real time, or near real time, I guess, technically, because there is a 2 to 10 minute delay between when the signals are sent from the vessels, captured by satellite or Coast Guard towers, and then eventually they make their way to EMSA with some processing in the background. But on top of seeing current real-time vessel traffic, we can also look at historical tracks. These are different than the other like season-wide ones I was showing earlier, but this one for a specific vessel, you can actually pull up the tracks, choose the specific time period, and pull up every single past position for the vessel. So the right-hand image, we're seeing the tracks for the Amundsen sometime in 2023, I think, 2024. So I could click on any point along its voyage and get the speed it was traveling at, the time that point was from, the direction it was heading in, all of that information. I can also monitor vessel activity in zones of interest. So it's what we call geofencing. Essentially, you select a zone of your own choosing. It can be something you just draw out manually, maybe a cultural area of significance, somewhere you go do harvesting, or it can be an area with like defined coordinates, like a marine protected area, one of the zones of the NMR, something like that. Once you have your zone of interest, you can then set up the system so that it's tracking any vessels that are entering or exiting that area. Or maybe if it's an area where vessels are allowed to transit through, but they have to stay under 10 knots or a certain speed, well, you can set a speed threshold and track vessel activity for vessels that are going over that speed. So you can make it as simple or as advanced as you want. And then you can be notified in real time by email or text. So you can get an email, it tells you, the such and such vessel just entered into your zone of interest. They were going at this speed, and this is the time they entered. Or you can also export reports. So that's what we're seeing on the left. Just as an example here, I set a 50-kilometer radius around each community in Nunavik, let the system run over the summer. And then I was able to export a report that lists every vessel. It tells me when it entered that radius around the community, when it left, how much time it spent within it, and the maximum speed. There's all sorts of different reports you can choose from, though. I'll skip subfleet reports just to quickly touch on the mobile app. So we've been talking about the web version. It's the version that's been developed for the longest time. So that's where all the functionality is on. If you want to build your own maps, those will be done on the web version. But there is a mobile application as well, which is great for offline work. So the mobile app allows you to build customized forms depending on the data you want to collect. And then you can go out on the land, collect your data offline, and everything will synchronize automatically afterwards. So we're looking at some examples of how some Arctic users, or what Arctic users are doing with the mobile app. Some of them, Inuit stewards, are going out taking pictures when they see a unknown vessel or a suspicious activity happening on the water, recording that on the app. Some are using it for environmental monitoring, so they'll go out, take ice thickness measurements, snow depths, and all of that, or even just to track their harvesting. So this is the QR code if you do want to request an account. We also have it at our booth in the other room across the hall. And if you have questions, we're happy to set up a call with you. We can give a more in-depth demo. Just send us an email to the email listed here. So that's it for EMSA, and I'll move on to the Places of Refuge initiative. This one, I'll just be a quick 5 minutes. I don't actually work for the Places of Refuge, so I've just been asked to sort of give a very, very brief overview. So just to briefly summarize what places of refuge is. A place of refuge is a place where a ship that's in need of assistance can take action to enable it to stabilize its condition, reduce the risks to navigation, risks to human life or the environment. So essentially they'll, any ship that's in trouble sends a message to Transport Canada. The risk assessment team, which is made up of Transport Canada and the Canadian Coast Guard, they will assess the requests that came in. They'll deliberate and determine if a place of refuge is granted or not, and which location the vessel should make its way to. So, yeah, essentially the main goal of this is, yeah, to reduce risks to navigation if a vessel is in trouble. The risk assessment team uses a few different tools to make their decision. One of them is EMSA, so the system that I just presented on, that I work for, the Transport Canada Marine Safety and Security team, they also use EMSA to get a near real-time maritime view on what's going on the water, which ships are in the area, what are the environmental conditions in the area, what are the tides like, all of that, because all of these factors will be taken into consideration. They also have on the right-hand side here a decision support tool, and using this, it essentially allows them to assess the feasibility or suitability of a location. So based on the geography, the navigation situation, the response time to a location, and resources at each location, but they'll also take into consideration risk factors. So materials, impact or risks to human health, cultural, like nearby cultural areas, and if needed, they'll also contact local authorities, provincial governments, Nunavik, yeah, and any whoever needs to be contacted, the Transport Canada team will contact to assess the sort of suitability of different locations. Currently, these are the 10 locations that have been proposed and are currently being assessed in Nunavik. From what I've been told, they've been chosen partially based on just where ships are going. And also in conjunction, they've done some engagement to get some more information locally on stuff that you can't pull from a map and from not having been there in person. So they'll take all of this information and kind of combine all of that together in their final decisions. That being said, so these places of refuge haven't been finalized, but once they are finalized, it's never too late to change them, make modifications. So if you do want to be involved, I'd invite you to write to Guillaume Villeneuve. He's the lead on this initiative for Quebec region. And yeah, so all his contact info is here. If you do want to be involved, if you have feedback on any of the proposed places of refuge, they would love to hear it and take it into consideration for whenever they finally publish the annex. And with that, that is all I had. So thank you very much. And once again, we have a booth on the other side. Feel free to drop by and ask more questions.
Thank you very much, Gabriel. That was a two for one. One presenter, two topics. I think you did a great job. Make sure your supervisor graded you well with bonus points. That was Gabriel Partington from the EMSA, Transport Canada. Again, he has a booth. They have a booth on the other side. Next presentation is the seasonal rounds, but from Dalhousie University. Please welcome Tungasitoli Raquel Cadman. I hope I said your name well. Yeah, welcome. Yeah, we have about 10 minutes as well, too.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Cadman. I'm an assistant professor at Dalhousie University in the Marine Affairs program, and I'm here to talk about seasonal rounds and marine planning. So it's my turn for the adventure of the remote. I'll say while I wait to see if this slide changes, that I've used a lot of artwork today from an artist named Jessica Winters, who is from Makovik in Nunatsiavut. She's done a lot of the work to help us depict some of the results of the EMRPC knowledge study. So you'll see a bunch of her work, and I have her website at the end of this, so if you're interested, you can check her out there. Okay, what is a seasonal round? So I think you've actually already seen a couple of seasonal rounds today from various presentations. These are calendars, but they are not like a regular calendar that you have on a wall with dates of the year and you're flipping the months. These are calendars that show the whole year all at one time. And they're not depicting kind of what date it is or if it's a Tuesday or a Saturday. These are depicting a relationship between people and an environment. So they tend to include harvesting activities, traveling activities, and they might include species interactions as well, so migration patterns and other things that are happening on the landscape. So we create seasonal rounds or calendars for a lot of different reasons. They can be used in planning to inform things like fisheries, conservation initiatives, shipping, harvesting regulations. They are used to track activities as well as show connections, use of the landscape, and change over time. So they're useful to think about planning for the future. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of calendars, and I've strategically chosen calendars that I think other people are going to talk about a little bit more in depth. So you can also ask them about it if I've missed anything. But this is the Hecate calendar from SIKU, and this is based on the SIKU app, which I believe a lot of people are already going to be familiar with. But this calendar uses 6 seasons, and this is based on Sanakiljuak, understanding of seasons, which is this kind of 6-season system, and they are using data collected in real time to represent when people are off on the land. So this is harvesters who are going out and they're entering their information into an app, and this is mapping it onto a calendar to show you when activities are happening at various times of year. So you can see, for example, a pretty intense bump of those red triangles on there, and that's indicating berry picking. So you can see that that's happening near the end of summer, beginning of fall in that region. So that's one way that we can kind of think about a seasonal calendar. This is another one from Arctic Corridors and Northern Voices from the University of Ottawa, and this one's from Resolute Bay. So this is collected in a slightly different way from that first calendar. In this case, they are looking at focus groups. So this is a group of experts, of knowledge holders who are working together to kind of discuss what is being harvested at various times of year. So a little bit of a different way of kind of collecting that information, and it tells us something slightly different about seasonality. So you can see, for example, in June there, when ice breakup is happening, you have a really high diversity of activities all happening at the same time, which is different from looking at the sort of November to February part of year where you have fewer species being harvested. So if we're thinking about planning, you might be thinking about that kind of high diversity and intensity of different types of activities happening at certain times of year, and those really important staples that are coming in at other times. This calendar you saw from Rod Lang this morning is from the Nunatsiavut government's EMRPC knowledge study. And this one I'll be biased towards because I know a little bit more about it, so I can talk about it more in depth. But this is based on the EMRPC knowledge study where 80 participants have spoken to us so far about how they use and value the marine environment. And we use those interviews and that mapping process to understand how people are using the marine space throughout the year. And that allowed us to design this calendar, working with that artist, Jessica Winters, to understand seasonal change. And this looks a little bit different from the other ones, again. So this is another way we can think of a seasonal calendar that is combining insights not from a single community, but from all of the communities along the Nunatsiavut coastline. So it gives us a little bit less of that kind of granular detail about what's happening, but it is also telling us kind of a story about seasonal change that looks a little bit different from the other ones. So in this one, we have the species that are being harvested, the same as those other calendars, but we're also capturing the activities that are happening. There are people embedded into this story. You see where people are going ice fishing, where they're fishing by nets, where they're picking berries in the fall. So they are part of this system, and it's a different way of thinking about that. We've also captured indicators of seasonal change on here. So rather than having kind of just that harvesting, we have where people have gone, now I know that we're seeing a new season come. So for example, you can see on the, what's that for you, left side on the bottom there, you can see a minke whale fin, because we know that in the fall, or what we heard from our interviews, is that in the fall, minke whales start coming into the bays because they're chasing the capelin. And when you see that happening, that's when you know summer is coming to a close and the fall is beginning. So we have these moments of indicators where we know that seasonal change is happening. So we can do a lot with these seasonal calendars. They can tell us a lot when it comes to planning. They can tell us insights in research in terms of how we are designing our research projects and how we are interpreting the data that we're finding. Importantly for today, though, really this is about insights for management. So the idea of developing indicators that are based on how people are interacting with the environment and what they care about can be really important when it comes to planning. We can also be thinking about the ways that different species and different human uses are interacting with one another. So one of our indicators is that red berries or lingonberries or partridge berries, depending on where you are, taste sweeter after the first frost. That's the combination of when those lingonberries, of what's happening with those lingonberries and the sugars, but it's also about what's happening in the environment with the first frost, and it's about the people who are going out to harvest them. So these are called like phenological indicators, which is the connection of those things coming together into a system. Also, we can think about big picture planning. So this just isn't only about kind of what's happening in terms of our data, but it's also telling us a different story about how we should be thinking about planning in the big picture. So what is really, really wonderful, I think, about this calendar is the way that it talks about how Inuit are responsive to conditions on the ground. One of my colleagues, Shane Anderson, looked at this calendar and the first thing she said was, "Whatever goes wrong, we always figure it out." And I think that's such a wonderful way of thinking about this calendar, that change is a constant across the Arctic, it is emergent, and this is about responding to what people are seeing. And so building a planning system that is actually reflective of that can look like this. This is also a representation of the relationship and responsibility between the people of Nunatsiavut and their territory, which I think is an important way of making sure that they are represented and those values are kind of deeply embedded in how we're thinking about planning. And last of all, it's an empowerment of that knowledge system, because this isn't just about the kind of data that we gathered from the EMRPC knowledge study, it's also about the wisdom that underpins that. So we can start first with that knowledge and move forward from that place. And I'll just give a little plug for using arts and research. So working with Jess for this was absolutely incredible, but being able to work through art, we've talked a lot about that idea of creativity through this last couple of days. Being able to use these creative methods to draw on, to be able to examine our data in different ways and be interpreted by different people can give us a deeper understanding of that information, but it's also an act of celebration. I think as we're doing this, these are wonderful and deep conversations that we're having, and they are also difficult. There's trade-offs, there's going to be conflicts. Moments that you are able to kind of celebrate and build relationships with one another are a really important part of this process. And that's all for me. Nakvik, thank you very much. And that's Jess.
Thank you, Raquel. That was the art in research. I mean, that's thinking outside the box, and I think it's really cool. Especially as Inuit, we're very visual. Visual is something that is very important to us. So I really appreciate you sharing that tidbit. Next presenter, before we go on our break, please welcome from the SIKU app, and also from the Arctic Eider Society, Alec. Hatanguti galaga kawasumay. Aling itong masud.
Ay, aliniwak siya nga pinasukat sa liang si Marnie ato.
So what we've done, the Angavigak, they are monitoring one of the mandates. I will show it through SIKU. Angavigak, the purpose, it started in 2021. One of the main purposes, documentation of the wildlife and the environment in Nunavik to support Nunavik mute harvesters. And for the training, provide training on safety tools for the climate application or adaptation. And SIKU through the app to document what we work for the training of observations during harvesting trips. Sorry. And every bi-weekly, we pay, harvesters are paid for their contributions. That will help the communities and they collect data so that the Angavigate can provide and to the importance of the Inuit harvesters to help them enhance. And the part of the mandate, if anyone is to be involved, first they will need training if they want to get involved. Some of the students, so we work with them in the communities. First, we go into the classroom, and the next day we will go outside and apply what we were trained on. And some of the objectives, it's that we've gone to different communities more than once in some of them. In meeting, we have had many trained students. You can see the numbers there. And I will show the so-called preliminary results. So this 138 Inuit have been trained, those from Nunavik. And there's a number of total kilometers traveled, what their observations of the wildlife for over 4,000. And this graph shows as to the number of trained for using the SIKU app. And this one 89 species, even the plants, 89 of them have been identified. But there's over 35,000 wildlife harvested have been posted. And this graph shows the number harvested. What in Nunavik, what we harvest mostly, the walrus, bears, and also which one? Eider ducks. 84% are showing only. And the marine in the shoreline, we can see what is being harvested in the marine area. Marine mammals, excluding belugas, it identifies what the the migration and the seabirds and the different fish, the white fish and other different fish, and also it shows it's red where for example, the Arctic char fishing, where Arctic char was harvested, and also the bearded seal, the ringed seals, and the common eider ducks. And the polar bear. And you can see the estimate of the costs, or these are estimate amounts. For example, these are examples. For example, the if it's $2 a pound through commercial fishing, the fish. For those using the SIKU app, in the sea ice, the ice observations as to the thickness, and you can see the yellow if it dangerous ice observations are identified. Sorry. And each year in 2020 up to 2025 as to the ice breakup and when the forming of ice, when it takes place, and the dangerous areas, ice posts. And this map where the harvesters, where they went, what they use, we can use different vehicles that were used. And also for those using SIKU app, can be different if there's for the flow edge where they are. For those who want to observe, you can see the red spots where there was observations made by harvesters. If you want to write to me, this is my email address. Thank you.
Tell you, 2 million.
Inuit are capable 2 million. I was quite surprised that if they were commercially I was not quite clear, but at the top, food security, the store-bought food are quite expensive. For the traditional food and the cost, I was happy to see the amount estimates made the government. So I was happy to see that. We're going to, before we take a break,
Stand up si uliutlu kisente ko paksuti sala haut lilo.
Thank you to those who made the presentations. There will be a question period. It's the time is 3 o'clock. So we want to applaud those who made their presentations. That was quite clear. Thank you.
Nice. Nice. Ilinya niko katoy nagatsi niko wigitsi tuwang me atanak to unna ninganilnya ilse si matokotsi. So if you've taught someone on how dangerous it is to be how dangerous it could be, like te matiata na kumbe makala tu pinso hatakat makuning. Unali atjigi tulare kalo mayo niko.
This is quite different. Stand up if you can for a B.
Stand up if you would not get paid. As if a bee to come close to stand up, you would not get paid, right? So it's like you would never ever get close to a bee. Hey, you would never ever go. I mean, this is done. Okay, there's a second part to it. Stay standing if you would land on your arm. Would you still be okay with a bee standing up? I mean, landing on you? That's fine. Okay, stand up if you would never, ever, ever let a bee land on you. Those who have fear of bees, you would never let a bee land on you, eh? Well, thank you. The reason we say that, because the further north we are, the less insects there are. And I have some friends from Nunavik. Living in Kuujjuaq, we got a lot of mosquitoes, we got a lot of black flies, we got a lot of bees. And even Hudson Street, when they come to Kuujjuaq, they start screaming at these little things. And these are hunters, eh? They're like, yeah, I'm a hunter. I go out on the land. But once you see a small bee like that, like, wow, why are you doing that? It always amazes us. So that's why I want to put that in there. Okay, I got a new set of questions here. But this one on the first page, the first trivia, I think there's a few people that should be exempt. But anyway, you'll understand. How many islands in the NMR do the Inuit own, jointly or solely? The closest will get the prize. In
Inuit ownership, how many islands are there in the region?
I can only hear you, and the translator only can hear you. Go up on the mic.
How many Inuit own islands? The number?
I'm going to get someone to guess. Come on. Let's snap this. Any number. Any number. This is mind-boggling, by the way. Okay, there was 80 from Salamiwa. Billy,
I don't know the exact number, but it's the 80% of the islands in the NMR.
Yes, okay, nice. I wonder what that 80% is. Billy Dan?
1,187.
1,187? Do you know what? You're much closer to Salamiva. You're getting closer. You're hotter. 80 was way too low. You got to go a little bit higher than that. There's a prize. There's a prize involved.
7,530 islands.
Wow, cheat. I'm going to give it to Billy Dan. He was closest without cheating. But that is the answer. Inuit own, jointly or solely, in the NMR region, 7,530 islands. That is shocking. 7,530. So the one without insider information was Billy Dan. His guess was 1,187. He came closest, so Billy Dan is our winner. Prizes is right there with Janelle. Nakumik, it is now 3:10. We will get back in 15 minutes at 3:25. Gawin silang about 3:25 ngutok. Let's give you a better chance to win some prizes. Okay, I think this one's pretty cool. I like this one. Which animal, this is a trivia, of course, with a prize. Prizes are there in the back. Which animal, considered to be a relic from the last ice age, can be found on Diana Island after they were reintroduced in the area in the 1970s? Isa to hamangat. Nalia umaro. Okay, I think I saw Lucy again, but there's also, okay, Lucy. Nalia umaro. Nuiti tawala to win. Ako ni tsaralo tsinabangan talo wala yuwiniwalwak sunita numero suna.
Ivik.
Suna?
Ivik.
I can't hear you.
Diana Island, huwag daw sa nen. Ivik.
Oh, yagim miyo. It's not walrus. I know, Salamiva, you did, but there was another lady here. I didn't see who. Please introduce yourself. So, which animal can be found on Diana Lake, which apparently is off of Huatak? They were reintroduced in the 1970s. Which animal is that?
Hi, I'm Jenny Knopp from Oceans North. Is it in the water or on the land?
On the land.
I don't know then.
Oh, Salamiva? Okay, after Salamiva will be Kathy.
Muskoxen.
After Kathy will be, sunogo, Salamiva?
Muskoxen.
Muskoxen. Umimak. Muskoxen. Salamiva Witaltok. Yay. Tawang nga, sala how to meeting with siyak tarit. Naloto, yok tan na. Nuitang ito haven yung laksuni. Ako niya lolok to 1970 sa kawang ni nuitito gila si mayok umimate. Umimay na ko hawi mayaw sa umata. Ako ni tatsayal laki utiligo abang nga niya lo akawa saktuan ni akawa na misuga saktuan ni tay mga niya lo nuita sugo na hutigi yaw lak tuto havinak umimak. Salamiwa so na mitigo si Vit. Labrador tea. Congratulations, Salamiva. Yay. Utahuri lagalok mo yung ngayon. Yes. Okay, I'll do one more trivia. Alagane, which Nunavik community holds a record for the world's highest tide? Oh, I saw Lucy lift up her hand very quick. Lucy Critic.
Tasiuyak Leaf Bay.
Tasiuyak Leaf Bay holds the record for the world's highest tide. Sala how timiti wisyarit, Lucy? Bonus question. How high was that record tide at Leaf Basin in Tasiuyak? How many meters or feet? How you mabisi? Pilidan to so mangite. Mitso salo ko. Tasiuyak mi tinininga ulinninga hanito mga silaktua mi tinisungo nakpak. Silaktua lima mi tinisungo nakpak. How high is the record tide?
Okay, I'll guess.
Excuse me, go ahead, Julie.
I should preface this with based only on my knowledge of the Bay of Fundy.
So
I'm guessing 72
Okay, first, give me Bay of Fundy's record. I have it right here.
65 feet.
Excuse me?
65 feet, I think.
I only have it in meters. Darn.
Uh-oh. I'm out.
But Bay of Fundy is 15.85 meters. That's the record that Bay of Fundy has
Okay.
in Nova Scotia.
Now
So
if I'm guessing, let me say 17. Wait, what did you just say?
I'm not going to repeat. I'm not going to help you.
I feel I've been trapped. Let's guess 17.2 meters.
17.2. Okay, you're close. Is there another one that want to guess?
Rules.
Is there anyone else that wants to guess? Okay, Evie, Mark. I'm not going to say yes or no yet, Julie. I'll let you know after a few, the ones who get closest enough. Evie, Mark, Tasiyo.
16.5.
16.5, close, close. I'm going to keep it in there. If someone gets really, really close, Mark Bolle.
Tunu, I'm doing it for one of the ladies sitting there. She says she's too shy to come. Can I do it for her?
No.
Okay.
The only reason I'm doing this trivia is to get people to come to the microphone so that they get used to it. Kathy.
16.15.
16.15, getting close. I mean, a few people. I'm going to give that shy one there an opportunity. I don't know, Mark, if you can convince her to come to the mic. She has to come up here. She has an opportunity to win a prize. Allez. Yay. I really enjoyed that moment of peer pressure. Introduce yourself and give me the amount.
I'm Marianne, working for the KRG News Planning, and I would say 16.7.
16 what?
0.7.
16.7, not yet. Oh, I'm going to give two more people a chance here. I think people are still trickling in. Achut, you're close. You're close. You're not wrong. You're pretty close. Okay, one more person. I have 17.2, 16.5, 16.15, 16.7. Joshua Arek,
15.
15?
Yeah.
Just 15? Okay. No, that's not the right answer. Oh, I should have wrote down who asked, who pointed out. So, una Hanindipak, the closest one, if there are no others. The highest tide ever recorded for Tasiuyak's Leaf Basin is 16.35 meters. World record. Better than Bay of Fundy's 15.85 meters. So we do have the world record. It may be unofficial, but I want to know who guessed 16.15. Kino kayo to na? Yeah? 16.15, Kathy? You're the winner. Without going over. So Janelle is right there. She'll have you a prize. I think that's a very cool fact. I think we have such a beautiful marine region, NMR. I was going to start saying NMR. We have such a beautiful NMR area, and that's one of the facts right there that Nunavik holds the world record in something, and I think that's very cool. We shall continue. Next person who will be is about the conservation networks and Arctic conservation from the World Wildlife Fund, WWF-Canada. Please welcome Erin Keenan. Tungositoli Erin Keenan. I remember about 10 years ago when WWF, World Wildlife Fund, sued World Wrestling Foundation, and they won. So they're now known as WWE. So please welcome Erin Keenan.
Oh, the clicker.
Okay, so this one is to go, and this go back and later.
Okay, thanks. For a second there, I thought there wasn't going to be a wrestling joke. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to have to make a wrestling joke now. But luckily, that's out of the way. So we can just get going. But thank you to the Nunavik Marine Region Planning Commission for giving WWF-Canada a time slot on this very busy agenda. I really appreciate being able to be in the room and also share a little bit more information about what WWF-Canada has done in the past, what we're doing right now, and how that might be useful in the upcoming marine planning process. But I'm going to start off just with a little bit of background on what WWF-Canada is. I'm sure some folks in the room are familiar with our brand, but most of our work in the Canadian Arctic has focused in Nunavut, not so much in Nunavik. So I just want to explain or clarify that WWF-Canada is a conservation charity that works in Canada. We contribute to a global network of WWFs around the world, but we work in Canada. We're not an animal rights organization. We really focus on habitat conservation and mitigating the impacts of industrial activities on wildlife. As I mentioned, we focus mostly on habitat protection and stewardship, and we really prioritize supporting Indigenous-led conservation work. That's especially true for the work that we've done in Nunavut, where we work primarily with hunters and trappers organizations supporting projects on Indigenous protected and conserved areas, helping to advance those, supporting guardians programs, community-led monitoring, and other locally led conservation projects. But another big chunk of the work that we've done in Nunavut relates to the Nunavut Land Use Plan. So I thought I would talk a little bit about that to contextualize how an organization like WWF can contribute to a planning process. So we heard from Adrian a little bit about this process earlier today. WWF has been engaging in I'd categorize our work in two ways on the land use planning process in Nunavut. We've been at the sort of formal planning process table, so we participated in the public hearing process to provide submissions for particular considerations that we thought should be incorporated into the plan from a conservation perspective that's informed by the work we do with our community partners. But we've also, in addition to that sort of more maybe traditional role, we've also worked hard to support community engagement and providing resources to communities to be able to have meaningful inputs into the planning process. So this slide shows a hand-drawn map that was put together by the HTO in Talojoak that was submitted to the Nunavut land use planning process, and we worked with that HTO to produce a digital version of the map and help them put out a more thorough submission to the land use plan so that it could be more meeting more of the requirements and the expectations, I think, for something to be considered in the plan, and it's been integrated into the ongoing planning process. Today, I'm going to give a very short overview of a few different resources that I think could be relevant for the marine planning process in the Nunavik region. We focus a lot on marine conservation, and that includes developing tools that can be used for marine planning processes like this one. So I'll start by speaking about these two companion projects. These are both meant to support MPA development and marine planning broadly. And they essentially, these two maps show the outcome of, again, two companion projects that looked at what would a network of priority areas for conservation look like across the Canadian Eastern Arctic scale or at the whole Arctic Ocean scale. What are the areas that collectively will help ensure conservation benefits across that whole region if they were protected or other conservation measures were taken? So the conservation planners in the room will probably be familiar with the tool Marksan. That was the software that was used to develop both of these maps. The Canadian one, the acronym is CANPAC, Canadian Arctic Marine Priority Areas for Conservation. So the green blobs that you're seeing make up what could be a conservation layer for a marine planning process, showing what a network of sites that, if protected collectively, would meet regional conservation goals. In this case, the conservation goal that we used to guide the planning process was to protect key Arctic species habitats. They're not meant to become MPAs necessarily, but more just to inform, if we're looking holistically at a region and thinking about conservation, what are the sites that collectively would contribute to regional benefits? So we can break these down as well into site-specific profiles of each of the component sites that make up the network design. This was the result of over 5 years of work of intense data mining and collecting information about over 500 different aspects of the Arctic marine ecosystems. And so it's a useful resource just in the sense that it combines so much information about so many different aspects of the marine environment into one resource. ArcNet is similar, but at the scale of the whole Arctic Ocean. So how it could fit into a marine planning process that's regionally focused, like the one for Nunavik, is it can help contextualize how conservation efforts or planning within this region also contributes to global conservation benefits. How would protecting one area in this region contribute to conservation benefits across the whole Arctic Ocean ecosystem? And then the next tool I want to talk about, this one is actually an interactive planning tool that anybody can access online. It's based out of that ArcNet project, so this kind of global MPA network planning process. It's meant to also incorporate information about current industrial activities across the global Arctic. And it's a tool to help visualize industrial pressures across the whole region, as well as sensitive ecological features. But you can upload, for example, a map of a specific area of concern that you might have into this tool, and then play around with the settings to see like what are some of the industrial impacts that are happening in that specific region. Is it more intense in this region compared to other parts of the Arctic? Are there specific ecosystem features that are more sensitive to those activities in that area? So from that perspective, it's just useful for helping decision making around planning. This is just an example of one of the maps. Again, this is at a whole Arctic scale, but it can be zoomed in for a more regional focus. And this is showing like relative concentration of ecosystem features, so like wildlife habitat, that is either more or less sensitive. So where it's darker red, there's a higher concentration of habitats that we might consider sensitive to certain industrial activities. I also want to speak a bit about the shipping work that WWF-Canada does. So we, to inform the advocacy we do around mitigating the impacts of industrial shipping on Arctic ecosystems, we collect or access shipping data and produce different analyses that inform various aspects of the impacts that shipping can have. So I feel that I was a bit scooped by the Transport Canada presentation earlier because their tool is really, really cool. But we are looking at how we can kind of make some of the work that we've done analyzing this data available to communities that might also be interested in understanding that. So I'm going to share 3 maps that are from different reports that WWF-Canada will be releasing soon. So they haven't been released yet, but if there's specific topics that folks in the room are interested in delving into more specifically at a smaller scale, please talk to us about that. So this is from an analysis modeling expected underwater noise increases. So we looked at a baseline of 2019. The lighter colored areas are the louder areas, and then the darker areas are less loud. So this is to kind of illustrate the expected increase in underwater noise with Baffinland's expansion into Steensby Inlet, so the shipping that will increase through Fox Basin and Hudson Strait, and how that will affect noise levels. We also have looked at operational shipping waste, so you can kind of see on this map where are there areas where there's higher levels of shipping waste or waste from ships being generated, and what conservation concerns might come out of that. And then we've also looked at average ship speed. So you can kind of see where are there hotspots where ships are going faster or not, and can help inform does there need to be any mitigation? Are there specific concerns if there's areas where ships are going faster that poses a risk to wildlife or community concerns? So all things that are useful to consider in a marine planning process. And that's my quick overview. Please come and talk to me if you're interested in using any of these resources. All of our work is meant to support these kinds of planning processes, so we're very happy to be able to contribute however we can. So thank you.
That's what we want to hear. We got a lot of beautiful resources at our fingertips. Oh, you're going to, and you are, sorry. Oh, nice. I'm so, whoa. Sorry. Thank you very much, Erin Keenan. I really appreciate it. The next speaker, rounding out this group of resources for marine planning, we've had amazing people like the SIKU app, which was very interesting to conservation, the EMSA. Next to round out from the University of Québec à Rimouski, please welcome Denis Dubuc.
Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be with you here today. I've been invited here on a short notice, so my presentation is only in English. It's not in Inuktitut, so I'm sorry for that. I'm also being invited to share the work that we've been doing at the university for the last 2 years to show you what kind of data we are producing and what kind of data we are using. So I'm going to start Like the project is the mapping of the coastline and the classification of the coastal land cover in Nunavik. So the context in which this project take part is, you know it, there's an increase of ice-free period in all the Nunavik marine region. There's also increase of marine activity, and this lead to an increased risk of an oil spill. So why mapping the coast? It's to be better prepared in the event of an accidental oil spill. So by mapping the coast, saying if there's sandy beach, cobble beach, or rock coast, we have a better knowledge of the shoreline types, the geographical distribution, and we will be able to prioritize the area based on the sensitivity of the coast and arrive with the appropriate cleanup technique. So the main goals of the project is to do a high-resolution mapping of the coast, plus a characterization, and also to develop a morphological sensitivity index. So those are fancy words, but we just want to do an index of which coast is more sensitive than one other based on its morphology and its exposure. Second part, there's a development of an algorithm to do a classification of the land cover of the coast from freely available satellite data. Someone spoke about Sentinel-2 imagery, so we're using that. And the third goal is a little side quest, is to demonstrate the feasibility of obtaining bathymetric data from satellite imagery. So for the high resolution mapping, there's two major steps. First, it's the drawing of the coastline. So for us, it's the limit of the terrestrial habitat and the limit of the influence of waves and water. So it's grossly at the limit of the backshore and the supratidal zone. If we speak about the tide lingo, it's the higher high water large tide line. Once the coastline is drawn, we're characterizing it, so the backshore, the supratidal zone, and the intertidal zone is characterized. So we will say, is it a rock platform, a rock ramp, a boulder beach, and so on. So the data which we're working with two kind of data. First, we have a data set of not satellite, sorry, but oblique photography from helicopters that have been took from 2015 to 16. So we have a data set of about 30,000 pictures. We're also working with high resolution satellite imagery. So those imageries come from Pléiades. They have been bought by the government, and those pictures were took at low tide. And the government have been buying them for the last 4 years. You can see an example in Opaluk. The imagery is red because we're using infrared bands, so we can distinguish more easily the vegetation. And I said that it's high resolution because every pixel of the image is 30 centimeters underground, so it's quite precise. If we zoom a little bit, we can see a lot of stuff. So with those kind of data, we can interpret the coast and characterizing it. So as for the coverage, you can see the little green square. It's all Pléiades satellite imagery that we have. There's more now, but we're covering most of the coast of Nunavik. And as for the oblique photography, we're covering from Kujarapik to Kangik-Sulajuak. It's the red line and the blue line. And the only region that is missing is between Kangik-Sulajuak and Kilinik Islands. I wanted to show you a couple of examples because every time I'm working of mapping the coast, I'm doing a crazy sightseeing of the coast. So here we can see the estuaries of the Little Well River with hundreds of belugas. If we go in the Hudson Strait, there's a lot of rocky cliff, crazy raised beach and pebble beach like this. We spoke about Leaf Bay and their crazy tides. So this is Boulder Strew tidal flat from the Leaf Bay Basin. And if we go into Ungava Bay, south of it, there's huge mud flat and salt marshes. Yeah, and I wanted also to show you some pictures from the Pleiad Neo. Here we can see in the Kavik Bay region, Ipujuak Bay in the Ungava Bay, and there's also another one at the Maralik River estuaries in the south of Ungava Bay. So we spoke also about art and science. So when I see this, I see art because there's crazy, it's beautiful. So for the second part of the project, it's the classification of the land cover. So with our private partner called Actus, they developed an algorithm to classify automatically 11 classes of vegetation and substrate on the coastal area. So the goal was to use freely available satellite imagery, so Sentinel-2. Everybody can go on the internet, select a zone, and have satellite imagery. So those kind of imagery is coarser than Pleiad. It's 10 meter per pixel. So here we have an example on the left, still in the Ungava Bay. And if we apply the algorithm to classify it, we can see that it detects the macroalgae, the seaweed, bare rock, and fine-grained sediment. So the mudflat that I've been showing you. So it's quite precise. It detects important habitat. I've got also another example. This is south of Kengik-Sulajouak. We're still detecting the mudflat, but also the marshes. And there was also classes of vegetation, so we can see forest, shrubs, tundra, and even mosses. So for the bonus side quest, Arctus wanted to demonstrate the feasibility of having bathymetric data extract from satellite imagery, still from Sentinel. So they demonstrated with an example in Puvernutuk Bay. So we start with the satellite imagery, and we can detect the optically shallow water. So to do that, we need to see the bottom of the water. So this is binary, it's deep or shallow. And after that, with some NONA data from the Hydrographic Survey of Canada, we can have bathymetric data straight from satellite imagery like this. So it's possible. So where are we at? For the mapping of the coastline, we have about 40% done. It's a long process. It's all photo interpretation. We still have a lot of work to do. But for the land cover mapping, it's all done because it's semi-automated with freely available data. It's deep learning classification, so it's quite easy to. It's not easy to do, but less work. Anyway, and what we want to do with all this data, we want to put it on a web viewer. So some people have present online tool, so we would like to do that with all the oblique photography, the satellite imagery, the type of coasts that have been mapped, and also the land cover. So that's the plan of the project, and there's an example of another lab. There's an example of another online web viewer that another lab at Rimouski have been doing. So you can check it out. There's an internet link. And that's pretty much for me. Akumi?
From Université du Québec à Rimouski, Denis Dubuc. Tak nakumik. Takwa unikara taktuit taking a piyak sutik. Stephen Kilburn.
Stephen Kilburn from the Planning Commission, Gabriel Partington, EMSA. They look at the activity, sea activity with shipping and Raquel and also SIKU and Nunavik University and WWF-Canada concerning the Aaron Keenan about ship activity. And we just finished the University Quebec, Nunavik and University, and to see the satellite imagery as well as the helicopter images, photography. So it really shows what kind of data are already out there that we can already use. And also the Planning Commission has also sees what information we can already, what we already have or what we need to gather. So there are, so it just goes to show you that the Planning Commission can certainly have access to this type of information with all that's been presented. And the next presenter is the Tarquti, and they're already very active in the, they're leading Nunavik's energy transition. First speaker is concerning to start using to use less greenhouse emissions. And Carson Taguna will be doing the presentation.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Thanks for having us here. It's a bit of a for us to be talking on because in some ways we don't really have activities within the NMR, but I'll present a little bit about who Tarquti is today and sort of our position on energy production by way of hydrokinetics and sort of why we're not exploring it, rather. So we're Tarquti Energy, just to give a little bit of background on who we are. We're the renewable energy developer who's sort of jointly owned, or we are jointly owned by Makivik and Ilarisak. It's a venture that started back in 2018, or rather our operations got a little more on the go in 2018 when some staff were hired to get things going. The company is majority owned by Ilarisak, 51, with 49% going to Makivik. And the real idea behind this company was to ensure that energy production, or rather the development of the infrastructure, was done in a way where partnership was equitable with the communities, and that projects would be 100% regionally owned. Of course, there's other things that went into it, but that was one of the major sort of objectives with creating this venture, and a lot has come since that time, which I'll go into a little bit. Briefly, here's the team. Myself, I'm Carson Taguna. I don't think I introduced myself. I'm the Director of Communications at Tarquti. Oddly enough, I'm one of the newest members of the team, but to be speaking here, I mean. But I was with the shareholder, Makivik, for many years as the Director of Communications, so I followed the company along for many years. You know, in 2018, we went from sort of 1 or 2 employees. Now we have a full team of 10 full-time employees and various staff within the towns, or part-time individuals who help us with different things. You know, our community energy champions are more in towns where the projects are becoming a little bit more developed, and they play a community engagement role within those towns. We have the local agents who help us with our data collection projects. So when we have Met Towers installed, they're the ones who keep everything going and make sure those towers are collecting data year-round. And then we have our local reps for the SIKU kits, and these are individuals that we have to help distribute these solar kits that we develop to sell to individuals for cabins and camping and off-grid sort of situations. They're smaller scale, but not meant for communities or use within the towns on grid-connected infrastructure. I'll go back a little bit just to take a quick look at the energy landscape. I think it helps contextualize some things. This is a little graph that we like to show, and it has some interesting anecdotes. Now, this is from 2022. So since then, we've seen some stuff change in the region. So in Inukjuak, for example, the Nunavik project has been commissioned since then. So this data doesn't take into consideration the diesel that has been saved within Inukjuak. But to that, it still has what I consider to be an interesting anecdote. It sort of shows what happens when there is a large-scale infrastructure project happening. So in 2022, that hydro dam in Inuktitut was still under development. You see a big kick up in transportation usage of diesel, which I find is an interesting thing. But the main reason why we show this slide is it really shows the split between diesel consumed for electricity generation at Hydro-Quebec's thermal plants, as well as what is used for building heating. For those who don't know, Nunavik is still heated by oil burning furnaces, boilers, etc., because the community is not connected, the communities are not connected to the main grid. They're all microgrids. Heating by way of electricity using generated power plant, the efficiency is not there. So for efficiency reasons, Nunavik is not, the ban on oil burning furnaces are not imposed in Nunavik, and the communities are all really at this time still using oil burning furnaces to heat. And the reason I point this out is the projects that we're developing, initially the ultimate goal is really to alleviate the diesel that is being used for electric consumption at the diesel thermal plants. But our goal and the projects are scaled to eventually take over building heating as well, so that eventually once the projects have proved themselves and we know sort of what kind of operation we're getting from the turbines in this case, those are the first projects that we're going to be releasing, we'll be able to take that on and further reduce carbon emissions. On carbon emissions, this is again from 2022. We've sort of internally decided that we want to redo these studies to see where things have changed over the last few years, because communities have grown, the Nunavik project has been commissioned. So obviously Nunavik's landscape is a little bit different now, but this is a very interesting sort of metric to look at, I guess, and it's the total carbon emissions of Nunavik. We'll get there, but right now we have some sort of baseline things to reference. So we have the Raglan mine, Canadian royalties, and this is the last slide was diesel emissions. This is all fossil fuels. We see sort of where those entities are placed, which are within the region, but they're not counted towards the number I'm going to show you. So this is, if we were to take all Nunavik communities and we were to group their fossil fuel consumptions, we would rank 20th on that list of 100 top contributors within Quebec, which is a lot. You know, it's an interesting realization that was had once these numbers were put together. And this does not count the mines. This is in the absence of the mines. There's interesting things to take away from this, you know, like when you think of, on the individual level, reducing your emissions. In Nunavik, that means a very different thing because our baseload emissions are very high just because it's how our homes are heated. It's how electricity is generated. So if I were to turn my light off at home, it doesn't mean the same thing as when you do it here. So we like to show this number for lobbying purposes, I think, to sort of lobby for why these kind of projects need to happen. But even regionally, people find it quite interesting to see where it compares and to actually see sort of what the emissions of the mines are on them, or their own too. So I figured I'd show this quickly. This is another map that we have, so I'm running along quickly. This shows the communities where we've done studies. In some communities, we now have MOUs signed with the communities to further develop projects and to move studies on to the next phase, you know, whether it be a phase 2 or phase 3 study to hone in on a technology a bit closer. But the communities that have an icon are communities where we've completed feasibility studies and we've sort of identified that these projects could meet the demands of the community. For certain periods, you'd imagine solar, like wintertime, you're going to have very little output. The angle's wrong, the sun's not out long enough, but there's potential to offset still. But this is not an exhaustive list yet at this point. It's simply the communities where we have the data to make some kind of assumption on what technology could work. Umivik's case, for example, we have solar there, but we have not completed the wind study yet to evaluate the wind potential. And in the communities that don't have icons, we haven't completed the studies to be confident in suggesting a technology at this time. And then in some communities like Buvaknituk and Huaktak, we're now entering the execution phase, which is an exciting time for us at Tarquti, where civil work and construction will be beginning this summer, actually, in Huaktak in this case. Now, on hydrokinetics, you know, looking at the other map, you didn't really see any marine-based options. I mean, there was some references to the potential for hydro, but that's more terrestrial inland waterways. from the point of hydrokinetics, I think we acknowledge that there is great potential within the region, actually, but potential and harnessing that potential are two very different subjects. The potential to harness, I think, technology-wise, in our opinion, is not mature enough for a number of reasons. And one of the big things that we've tried to drive over the years is that the projects, the community-level projects that are developed cannot be a pilot project. You know, the power infrastructure is critical to the communities, and when we're developing a renewable energy project to offset the main thermal plant, it can't be done with unproven or unreliable technologies. And that's sort of where we've concluded that hydrokinetic technology is at this point. Some technology is getting more, it is being implemented, it's commercialized to a certain extent, but the generation potential is still quite small, you know, and I like this picture to use as an example. When you think of something like a wind turbine, over the years, the technology has matured to the point where they've really streamlined what a wind turbine is. If you were to look back on turbines being produced decades ago, there would have been some with like one blade, two blades. There would have been land-based vortex turbines. But they've really focused and streamlined what a turbine is. And nowadays, when you look at a turbine, it's pretty much the same thing. The internals may be different, but you have those three blades. They're different sizes, etc. But they've really mastered more or less what is the best way to harness wind energy, and hydrokinetics is not there yet. You're still, when you look at hydrokinetic energy, they're all widely different applications. A big one for us, which would definitely be a big concern for the communities themselves too, is they're not widely studied yet, so we really don't know what their environmental impacts are. We don't really know what kind of impact they would have on wildlife. So with those types of unknowns at this time, as a developer, we wouldn't bring that to a community as a solution to try to propose it as a way forward, because it'll require a lot of money to do those studies, especially under the Arctic context. How will they react with ice buildup during breakup season? Like, these types of things are big considerations for our geography, as well as sort of the power transmission is a whole other thing that we would have to try and figure out. You know, we have huge ice considerations, and I have a feeling that if this were to be considered, the major engineering feat would be reliably getting that power from the water to the land during ice breakup, etc. Very quickly, I know I'm over time at this point. This is just to give a very, very quick overview of kind of our project timeline and how things sort of look when it comes to discussing options, and then to that phase of actually putting boots on the ground and starting the civil work. At the very minimum, you know, this is about a 7-year window, and I'm bringing this up more for my fellow Inuit who are here from their communities, because they've probably seen us in their towns doing studies, putting up Met towers, and sometimes there's assumptions that, oh, Tarqueti's here with a Met tower and we're going to have a turbine in 2 years. Not really. You know, in some situations we may have a Met tower up, we might be back in 10 to start really developing these projects. So it was quickly just to touch on that. And then very quickly, just for the two, because this is quite exciting for us. Up until this point, Tarqueti has really been a data collection and sort of a feasibility assessing entity. Now we're shifting to execution. And this summer we'll be starting the civil work in Huaqtuq to build the first of our wind turbines. It'll be a single turbine, in this case, of 3 megawatts. The same turbine that's used at Raglan Mine at this point, and as well as Buvuknituk. Civil work is not to start this year. There'll be a little bit that begins at the end of the year for a little bit of the latter end engineering needs, but civil work is set to start in 2027 for Buvuknituk. But commissioning of Huaqtuq will be by the end of next year, actually, which is quite exciting for us. That's it for me, I think, over time, so I tried to keep it as brief as possible.
That was awesome. Thank you. That was awesome.
Developing for the Nunavik participant or partners. how they can be involved. Carson Taguna, please applaud or welcome him again.
Man,
For the tourism, Nunavik Tourism Association, Mark. Welcome, Mark.
I'll try. Thanks a lot for inviting us, and I really want to thank the committee, Susan, Janelle, and all of those people. Very patient with us because I'm not supposed to be here. I'm a substitute for Alan Gordon, who says hello to all of you. I like, Tunu, can I use your activity of standing up? Okay, thank you. All of those of you who had to do a one-time, anytime, a presentation, an oral presentation in school, stand up, please. If at one time in your scholarship, whatever, primary, elementary, you had to do an oral presentation. Okay, all those of you that had amazing presentations, that you were like, I really nailed it, sit down. Okay, those of you that are standing up might feel like me, because I'm like, okay, those were amazing PowerPoints that I've been seeing since yesterday, and mine is really a very bad one, very basic. So you can sit down. So thanks a lot. Well, first, my boss, which is Alan Gordon, he would have done a very amazing job here because he's been working for Nunavik Tourism for 40 years and even more, I think. So anyway, he would have been best than me, that I'll be doing, but I'm going to try my best. So it was founded in 1983, as it's stated here, by Inuit outfitters. So it was created to support the tourism in Nunavik. And in 1997, with the help of Makivik and KRG, it was recognized by the Government of Quebec Ministry of Tourism. Like all the other regions in Quebec, they wanted to have a regional tourism association. So this is the Nunavik Tourism Association. So I've been working for them since March, in fall of 2023. Before that, I worked with the Crees, with CODA, for those of you that are from that territory. So basically, like I said, we're one of the 22 regional tourism association. Each regional association, well, their job is to promote tourism in their region. We are a member-driven organization, not for profit. So this basically goes there. And our goal is to promote tourism in the north, but with some authenticity. Well, that's something that's very, very important because there's a trend in tourism, and indigenous tourism is a big trend. So, well, tourism isn't new. It didn't start in 1983. We can date back in the 50s and even before. There's Susan Lofthouse from Avatax. She told me the story about a lady, I'm not sure, Susan, if I have the name correct, Mina Hubbard, that went in Naskapi, and she kind of did like an adventure tour there. And so that's kind of the further we go far. Before that, well, it was all Hudson Bay Company. There was big caribou hunting sporting camps in the 1980s and 90s. But when the caribou sporting hunt was closed in 2019, then we saw more like a trend. Some closed permanently, and some others just decided to do something else. Some were already offering fishing trips, so that's what they're still doing now. And others decided to open up ecotourism lodges and camps. And we have our member here, James May, who operates Angava Polar Ecotour. That's very ecotourism oriented. Nunavik Parks is also a member of Nunavik Tourism, and they're offering non-consumptive tourism. When we say that, non-consumptive, it means you're not supposed to take anything out. So we see a lot of tourists that are interested in learning more about the culture in Nunavik. So our challenge is, well, that's no news for you, remoteness and high transportation costs. I often take my own example for that. My wife originally came from Brazil. She's in Canada since 27, I think, yeah, 27. And I can fly twice to visit her family in Sao Paulo, round trip, for one trip to Kuujjuaq. So that's kind of putting it in a balance. So it's a very high cost. But that also brings some opportunity because some people, they like that idea of remoteness. They want to see the wilderness and they say untouched. Well, they don't know that the Inuit have been there for a few thousand years. It has been touched. So, and some of our challenges are also regulation changes. Some deal with, for example, airstrips. My boss, Alan, he has a problem with his airstrip. It seems that for Transport Canada, it's not long enough. So those are type of challenges that our members have. We also have new regulations, certifications need. That's okay, we can live with that because, well, we want people to be safe, but still, it's something that is starting to come up more and more. Insurances are, want us to like bring forth that our members need to have certified guides and everything like that. And also another challenge is competing with other northern destinations. It happens that we hear, oh, Nunavik, it's not high enough. It's not north enough. So it's like, okay. So yes, we do have those type of comment, and some people think, well, we want to visit the north. I'll go visit Alert then. So have fun over there. So, sorry, I should keep focus with this. So our Nunavik Tourism Association is located in Kuujjuaq. We have 5 full-time staff. I'm one of them, and 1 part-time. For those of you who know her, and I know Tunu, you know her, Louise Seguin, she sends her regards. She might be listening right now and saying Mark is doing a very bad job, but then again. So we have 90 active members. It's an annual membership, so, and they renew every year. Our BOD is comprised of 7 elected members, so they have to be members, and we have 2 appointed members from KRG and Makivik. We try to focus on sustainability, marine culture, and also to bring respect. Well, we think that all our members are respecting the marine environment and the land as well. And we believe also that tourism is an economic tool for the communities. So that's something we think that we've seen it. So, and it can create jobs. And it also helps, and with Makivik and KRG funds, and with the Ministry of Tourism also, we can try to help people start up businesses and have guides that are being trained. The traditional crafts are very, very popular with the tourists. When they come up north, they all, well, those that visit Kuujjuaq, they stopped at TV Gallery, that's for sure. Those are our members, so you must know a few of them in there. So our president is Johnny May Sr. For those of you who are not aware of who this guy is, he has the highest number of hours as a bush pilot, and he still flies. So he's an amazing guy. Lots of stories. So if ever you cross paths, ask him to share some stories of his. So it's very nice. So there you go. I'm trying to go fast. Sorry for the translator. I hope it's not so bad. Anyway, so our role basically is to support the communities to develop the tourism in their region. Also, we try our best to bring the marketing and the destination development. By the way, we do have we worked on a strategic plan from, the strategic plan is ending this year, so it was a 2023-2026 strategic plan on trying to upgrade and promote more the Nunavik tourism and to develop the offer. What we do also is representing Nunavik when we go to different trade shows. We have our colleague Isabelle Dubois. She goes around sometimes in Europe and other places, and she promotes the tourism in Nunavik. So we're trying our best to bring forth the beautiness, or well, the beauty of the Nunavik region. Also at provincial, national, and international events. So we try to raise awareness amongst the stakeholders and general population about the challenges and opportunity as well. And sometimes you would be surprised. Some people are not even aware that the Inuit are not under the Indian law. They still think that, oh yeah, it's all the same. No, it's not the same. So sometimes it's stuff like that that we try to bring forth, and so that they can, well, learn a bit more. Looking forward, well, we're trying to see, and we do work with Tarquti, thank you for their work. We try to work on a climate adaptation plan and green energy production, especially for the remote camps. For them, it's even more challenging because they have to bring the fuel, bring propane, it's tough. Youth involvement, I know I've heard some people talk about that, and some are saying, oh, they're always on our phone. Sometimes I'm like, me too. Anyway, but so tourism also that's rooted in Inuit cultural values. I don't know if you're aware of Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada. They have a great program called Original. So what they do is they certify real Indigenous owned businesses, because you've seen that in some parts of Canada, some people are like, oh my God, red already. Oh, I used to play soccer when I was thinner, so I'm sorry, I saw that. So okay, so we try to collaborate and to the protection of heritage site, notably Old Fort Chimo. We're working on a project there, and St. Stephen Church in Kuujjuaq. So there you go. No questions, eh? Okay, bye.
You took the words right out of my mouth. No questions, okay. Thank you. Mark Bole, Nunavik Tourism Association. Tunga si Teole. Manali takwa kanadakot umek.
At this time, the cruise ships, Adventure Canada,
The clicker? This button, right?
This one to go back and laser.
Perfect, thank you. All right, everyone can hear me? Good afternoon, thank you for the great sessions today, and I know it's been dense with information, so I hope you can bear with me for another 10 minutes. My name is Sebastian Charge, and I am the Operations Manager for Adventure Canada, a company which has been operating in Inuit Nunangat for almost 4 decades. Today I want to share how Adventure Canada's expedition cruise operations work in Nunavik, and how these operations have the key ingredients to be truly sustainable while generating value for Nunavik when this development is planned for and managed. Expedition tourism is seasonal, flexible, limited by design, and not extractive. To succeed long-term, expedition tourism must be trust-driven, and it must be community-led. This forum brings together community members, it brings together right holders, planners, regulators, researchers, NGOs. This is the starting point
where expedition tourism in Nunavik must build that trust. Nunavik's geography is remote. Everyone in this room knows this. And that shapes the types of development pathways that are possible. We've heard this today. Expedition tourism represents one development pathway, not the only one. Makivik knew this back in 2005 when they started Cruise North. What's critical is that this pathway is planned for collectively. Expedition ships are small to medium-sized. The expedition season is short. It spans July to September across Inuit Nunangat. For example, Adventure Canada is only in Nunavik for 5 days this summer. More importantly for Nunavik, though, is that expedition schedules can change when required. This flexibility allows communities to say yes, no, or not now. Expedition tourism is not mass cruising. There are no thousands of Southerners flooding communities at one go, fanning out across the tundra, and there are no permanent facilities required. Adventure Canada is a Canadian-owned Arctic operator. We have a lot of experience in the Canadian context, but we also operate under the framework of IECO, which is the Association of Arctic Expedition Cruise Operators. That framework, that operational framework, sits alongside Nunavik marine planning, impact review, archaeology management, wildlife boards, Inuit governance structures, not outside of them, alongside them. IECO standards frequently actually go beyond Canadian regulation. These include site scheduling, visitor caps, wildlife buffer distances, waste handling rules, and site-specific guidelines. These are binding operational standards. They're not suggestions. Operators can be removed from IECO for non-compliance. I know that because I am the chair of the IECO membership committee, and I have been for 2 years. Ships are highly regulated. If we apply, to use Nunavut as an example, if we apply for a Class 1 site archaeology permit through the government of Nunavut, and we are denied this permit, then we do not visit that site. I also want to talk about the key risk factors for expeditions as a development pathway and what many people rightly think about when they think about ships. Expedition ships treat oil residue, wastewater, and garbage on board, and are designed to be far better at this than resupply vessels, bulk ore and oil carriers, and to be frank, Canadian Coast Guard vessels. These requirements are reviewed and enforced in coordination with Environment and Climate Change Canada, Transport Canada, Nunavik Marine Planning through their permitting process, and international regulation. In fact, in Nunavik, discharge is actively avoided, not mitigated, avoided. No discharge is permitted for expedition vessels in the Nunavik Marine region as a condition of our permit through the NMRPC and the NMRIRB. This means that our vessels operate as a closed system while transiting the region. Environmental protection is built into the voyage planning phase. It's not added during or later. I also want to talk about safety and emergency preparedness. That's our old ship, Ocean Endeavour. We just left her this year. She's actually in Nuuk as a barracks for the Danish military right now, so kind of interesting. But in this emergency preparedness in the north, expedition vessels must be self-reliant. I want to address another key issue, specifically the safety and emergency preparedness, because it is important for development and for this to be a consistent pathway. Expedition vessels carry backup systems for propulsion, power, and communication. There are international regulations now Modern expedition ships have to have safe return to port. That means that all of their critical systems are redundant. And they can, if they have a critical failure, they're able to return to infrastructure, to actual big ports. We coordinate very closely with the Canadian Coast Guard, with the Joint Rescue Coordination Centers out of Halifax and Trenton. And this coordination is not theoretical. It is practiced and implemented with federal authorities, planners, and international partners through regular exercises. These exercises include Canada, they include Greenland, they include Iceland, they include Norway, and oftentimes even the United States. In an incident, nearby expedition vessels are vessels of opportunity. They will reroute immediately, and we've seen this play out in the high Arctic with academic EOF and One Ocean several years ago. You can read the Transport Canada TSB reports showing this. We have a strong incident management record in the Arctic, and increasingly the industry writ large has modern, reliable vessels. Incidents are mitigated against, and they are extremely rare. What does happen consistently year over year is economic benefit, which does not, and I stress this, it does not need to come from sheer passenger volume. It becomes, this is a bit jargony, but it comes from direct local engagement and establishing local partnerships that create shared long-term value, long arc relationships. The type of economic development includes per passenger fees, community service fees, training up local guide capacity, training up local security capacity, community hall gatherings, and in Greenland now increasingly local groups of collections of local boat operators that actually are the ones to take our guests out. When they're in communities, guests also purchase art, parkas, mitts, prints, beading, other creations. I'm talking in an Inuit Nunavik context. Country food feasts are common on Adventure Canada trips. I included, I don't think I included any photos, but we had some great feasts in Saluit. And we also have donations and in-kind support. The takeaway here, though, is the communities set the fees and they decide the terms. Saluit is a good example of a community-defined approach. We worked closely with Sami Putu, with Adami Saviajuk, Peter Puxley, then Mayor Maggie Saviajuk, and I apologize for my pronunciation. And I know Michael Cameron is somewhere in this room, and also Nunavik Tourism, Mark Belay. We generated $55,000, a lower bound estimate, over 2 visits in 2024 and 2025. That was a visit that was coordinated locally, and that reflects the same governance principles represented in this room. Local decision-making is supported, not overridden. And income, frankly, is distributed across households. It's not concentrated. Expedition tourism also has the opportunity for skills-based pathways. There's local guiding, sure, but there's also expedition careers. Inuit in our Adventure Canada expedition teams have sailed with us in Atlantic Canada, Antarctica, Faroe Islands, Greenland, Iceland. They become members of the team, and then they can follow that pathway. This is also an important opportunity for youth and young people in Saluit, and I think I'm out of time here, so I'll rush through this last part, to see these pathways, but without having to leave their community. I want to really bring this to the forefront as well. Inuit harvesting always takes precedence. This principle is non-negotiable and understood across responsible operators and everyone in this room. I want to reiterate that expedition schedules are flexible, and if there's harvest activity in an area, then we should not go in there. We can dynamically adapt to that. And finally, successful expedition tourism in Nunavik depends on early engagement. With communities, yes. With the people in this room, Nunavik Marine Planning, Makivik, and the other governance bodies that are represented here. It should also be conservative growth, if this is what is desired, and community voice must remain at the center. It must be informed by Inuit, supported by planners and regulators, and it must generate verifiable economic value to Nunavik. This forum is the foundation that sets what that model looks like. Thank you.
That was really nice, very respectful.
Thank you. Let's welcome Sebastian Charge from Adventure Canada. Let's thank him.
Learn from them. They've done their homework. They're making sure that they're being respectful of our traditional values, and I think getting to know them like this is a very important step. So thank you again from Adventure Canada for taking the time to be here. Our next presenter is from the Amundsen Science in terms of research. Please welcome Alexander Forrest, or Alexandre Forêt.
Forêt, yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Nice
Welcome.
to meet you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So it's here? Okay. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'm really happy to be your last talk of the day. Please bear with me, my voice is a little weak, so in contrast to Mark earlier, I have better pictures than him to showcase, so I don't speak as loud as him, so we'll see how it goes. So I'm Alex Forrest, the Executive Director of Amundsen Science, and I will be explaining to you a bit our activities in the Nunavik Marine region and how we do also more broadly for the Canadian Arctic. So a bit of history first, for those who know or don't know. The Amundsen has been built in 1979 at the Sir John Franklin, so it was the name before, and it has been decommissioned by the Government of Canada in the late 90s, around 2000, when the Government of Canada wanted to reach deficit zero, which is not exactly the case today, but at the time that was the goal. So one icebreaker was considered in surplus, you know. It was completely declassified, decommissioned. It was getting rusty in Newfoundland, St. John's, getting as a kind of accommodation for temporary workers in the area. In the early 2000s, just after that, so the community, the research community came together to actually resurrect the ship and give it a new mandate, a research icebreaker. So completely retrofitted in 2003, renamed Amundsen. So you can see the cake here from 2003, made by Jean Soulard from the Château Frontenac in Quebec. And this mandate, you know, really unique among the fleet, really different than all the other vessels of the Canadian Coast Guard, with a research mandate towards academic research. And I include into that also northern colleges that are actually part of our broad user community. And actually we work with everyone in the Canadian landscape. And we manage the mandate of the scientific research icebreaker Amundsen, our organization, which is a not-for-profit corporation, Amundsen Science. So it's very different. Maybe you've known the Amundsen as the Arctic net ship back in the days. This is not the case anymore. We are a distinct organization with our own board of directors, and actually we are not a research program in itself. We manage the scientific mandate of the vessel as a national research infrastructure for everyone. So if you want to have access to the ship with all the capability, it's completely possible. It's not fully funded yet by the Government of Canada. You still need to come with at least some financial contribution. But we might actually getting there in the next few years with the transition to a new program from the Canada Foundation for Innovation. So this is our organization. If you want to go on our website, amundsenscience.com, you'll learn a lot about our history, how we function, and so on. So the Amundsen in itself, in Canada, is the most advanced research vessel thus far. There's been the newly built Nala Napaluk that you might have heard, which has been built by the Seaspan shipyard, which will be located in Dalhousie shortly. But so far, the Amundsen with the equipment pool and all the pedigree, speaks for itself. Many thousands of scientists boarded the vessels, and this is something that we should be proud of. If you have a $50 bill in your pocket, you'll see the Amundsen on it. So don't forget that it's kind of a national symbol for Arctic research and also inclusive in terms of all the different aspects of the activities we conduct. So we are quite proud about especially our pool of equipment, because this pool of equipment really serves the Canadian research community from coast to coast to coast, and it will serve different kinds of studies, coastal, offshore, high-Arctic, subarctic, and so on. So in more than 20 years of operations, the requisitioning of the Amundsen happened in 2003. Many programs, not only ArcticNet, a very high diversity of program over the years, especially more recently, as you saw earlier, we have been included a lot of Inuit-led research. So for instance, the Imapivut marine plan that we're supporting, you've heard about it a few times today. I think it's a kind of good example about how we work, not only welcoming the world, but also having the world working with Inuit communities in the north. So in relationship with the support to indigenous priorities, this is something that we took really seriously in recent years. Of course, at the beginning of the Amundsen, it was not exactly like that. Inuit were on board as marine wildlife observers, more as observing participants and so on. But now they are really active. They have job on boards. The research that we conduct is aligned with some of their priorities and so on. We organize also science days in the communities. So this is more than a community visit. It's really like a bilateral exchange of information, culture, science, and so on. So it's really about building meaningful engagement here. And this is what I wanted to underscore today through this talk, is that the Amundsen, it's not a ship for the elite universities, it's for everyone. And if you want to get access, please let us know, because we have true opportunities for you to do work in the area of where you want. So the presence in and around the Nunavik marine region since the beginning, so since 2003, you can see it's a bit. Hopefully you'll get access to the presentation afterward. There's a color coding here. A lot of the early days, like in 2003 to 2005, in yellow, but you can see in Hudson Strait, for instance, and Ungava Bay in blue, the more recent work, CTD stations, oceanographic stations, moorings, and so on. So there's already a very interesting data set here that we could use as a community to make sure that the marine planning process will occur based on evidence from the past. Maybe you know, I wanted to underscore that the Amundsen has been served as the main platform for 2 Inuit health surveys in Nunavik so far, one in 2004, really back in the days, and the most recent already just before the pandemic in 2017. Now the Inuit health surveys are directly conducted within the communities themselves, which is super great, but I think with the Amundsen, it really provided the basis to where we are today with those Inuit health surveys. More recently, we had on board a very interesting program in partnership with the WAGE international program, so this International Graduate School on Emerging Blue Economies in the Arctic. So this was bridging across social sciences and natural sciences. It occurred in October 2024. There has been some students spent some time in Kuujjuaq. Then after that, on the Amundsen itself, it has been showcased in one of their most recent episodes of the CBC French Découverte. If you've seen, it's really interesting to see those people working all together, social sciences, natural sciences, and also Inuit trainees in a holistic context. So in terms of data sets, I've liked a lot this morning the pitch about this data trap. What we want to support with the Amundsen is data that will be useful. Among all the research icebreakers, we did some analysis across the world, and we are the icebreaker that has the most citations in policy documents. So we hope that the data that we support, we generate, are really useful to actually plan and make sure that the environment is correctly addressed. So we have all the data sets from the past accessible through SIUS. So this is a new initiative. It's if you want to get access, and you can take a screenshot, but we can provide you the link afterward, of course. So how we share and connect. Although this year we don't have any activities planned in the Nunavik Marine region, the way it works with the Amundsen, it's not us, Amundsen Science, who directs the science, who provides the science objective where we go. It's really the research programs that apply for ship time. So a given expedition will be driven by the users. It's really a bottom-up approach. So if you want the ship to be in a central area, you need to apply for it, and then we can address and look into funding and so on, and actually address the next steps. We have many things from the last few years. If you want to get access, we have publications, reports. It's all on our website. We even have some podcasts. If you're driving back home today or at the airport, don't have anything to do, listen to our podcast on Spotify. Passage, really interesting. We have more than 20 episodes so far. In the north, we also do radios. When we are close to a community, we do radios interviews. We try to actually mention that we are present, because we know that the ship itself could disturb the environment with the noise, although we really care about the acoustic signature of the ship when we do the expeditions. We are really present on video and social media, and we also do sometimes live streams. If you go on our YouTube channel, you'll find live streams from last summer. For instance, ROV dive from the Makovic Hanging Gardens that took place actually last summer in the Labrador Sea. So this is what I had to say for you, just enough before my voice completely fades away. So I would like to say a big thank you. It's been a great opportunity to be here so far to learn about this marine planning process. And if we are ready to support in the way you want, please let us know. We can work together, and this is the goal of a marine planning process, as we have heard in the last 2 days. Nakurmik, thanks a lot.
Merci beaucoup, Alexandre. C'est vraiment un plaisir.
Okay, merci.
Alexandre Forêt, Amundsen Science. Ooh, we're not alone. We're not going to be alone in this whole process, where there's so many partners that are available, willing, and would be excited to help Inuit of Nunavik to start this process of planning in how we want to use our marine region. So I'm really happy that we got a chance to get to know you, that you took the time to come here to present your organization and your involvement and your excitement to be involved with Nunavik Inuit Marine Region areas. I wonder if that was the end of the presentations for today. I wonder if there are any questions that you would like to pass on or comment to any of the partners that we saw. And the activities that they're doing. For example, we had the Tarquti presentations, who are doing an amazing project that they're about to start, a windmill in Huaktak. We listened to the Nunavik Tourism and their capabilities and their interest in being able to support. We also have the Adventure Canada and the Amundsen Science, who have vessels who are interested to take part. It was an amazing opportunity to listen to these people. So, if you have questions, the microphones are there.
We're almost done. It was
laws, regulations, and things that we may have to follow. Like, and it was technical heavy. Today we're like, okay, we're not alone in this process. There's a lot of people that really want to help out. Inuit of Nunavik gain and assert their own inherent rights to be able to decide how they want to use their marine region. So I think it was I think everyone deserves a big, great a round of applause for your support. Nakomi. To finish our day with final words and expectations for tomorrow, please welcome Janelle.
Hello again. So that was a really long day and a lot of talking. And you guys have been really good listeners and really good sports. And I know we didn't get started exactly on time, but we're doing pretty good. So tomorrow, something I want to highlight is that we're going to do less listening and more talking. So it's going to be your time we're going to do some activities, and we're going to be talking at tables, and it'll be your chance to talk. In the morning, we do have Sheila Watt-Kluche doing our keynote speaker. She'll be here in the morning doing that. And then afterwards, we'll get started on activities tomorrow. A couple of reminders. So breakfast is again served tomorrow morning. We have lunch served here as well. And next door, you'll see a bunch of stuff on the tables. There's posters, there's well-being posters, there's pamphlets, all those things. If you can find some room in your suitcase and you want to take some, or you need extra copies that you would like to take, please feel free to take those items off the tables. We brought them to share with you all. And also the plant plots are still out there if anyone needs any instructions on how to plant your name tag. I did want to mention that it is chives, and it was specifically picked because it grows well in a northern climate. So I grow this on my windowsill in Iqaluit, and it does just fine. So it's not fragile. I hope you have a good evening. The mall's still open till 9. I hope you have a good meal and get some rest. Koinami. Oh, and please leave your headsets on the table. We'll get those charged up for tomorrow.